My brother wants me to unalive my dog. My dog growled at my niece, 3, after she spent an entire evening harassing him. Now my brother wants me to put the dog down. I have fostered a multitude of dogs in my life, and dealt with a lot of behavioral problems: dog aggression, cat aggression, food aggression, separation anxiety, super high prey drives. I've seen it all, and I've certainly encountered my fair share of dogs who weren't safe around small children. So I feel extremely confident in saying my current 5-year-old lab mix is safe for kids. He's basically a gigantic teddy bear, and loves everyone. However, it's always been my personal philosophy that dogs, and any other animal, really, should never be left alone with young kids, even if it's the sweetest, most mild-mannered dog in the world. The kids don't understand when they're pushing the dog past its limits, and the dog cannot reasonably be expected to put up with being harassed long after it's signaled that it would like to be left alone. My niece has never been good with my dog. She pulls his tail, climbs on/lays on him, hits him, pulls his ears, gets in his face and yells at him, and never gives him a second to himself unless she's forced to. He is basically a saint with her, but every dog has its limits. I stay as on top of this behavior as I can, forcing her to leave him alone when it starts to seem like too much, and locking him away in a bedroom if she won't. My brother and sister-in-law really just don't get it, though. I've tried to talk to them about this behavior a bunch of times, and they know it's wrong, but they think it's wrong in the same way that her refusing to share or not picking up her toys is wrong. They don't understand that it's dangerous, and that if she was left alone long enough, my dog might lose it and attack her. This has been going on for over a year. I've tried to have this conversation with my brother over and over, but he always acts like I'm criticizing his parenting. Which is not the case. I don't think my niece is especially bratty or out of control for a kid that age. It's just that this behavior is dangerous to both her and my dog, and it needs constant intervention. The same way that a small kid playing with a stove isn't especially bratty, it's just especially dangerous, and needs to be curbed ASAP. I even tried having a dog trainer friend explain this to him, and he still didn't get it. I've tried to come up with excuses for why we can never meet at my house for our family hangouts, but I couldn't think of one the other day, and my brother and niece came over. I was cooking dinner and not paying enough attention to make sure my dog was okay, which was absolutely my fault, and I accept responsibility. I asked my brother a few times to keep her away from my dog, but he kept saying she was fine. I did move my niece away from him a few times, but I wasn't vigilant enough, and my dog ended up getting to the end of his rope and growling at my niece. I immediately grabbed my dog and brought him into my bedroom. I did not punish him at all. Frankly, I'm glad that he signaled loud and clear that he was uncomfortable. I would never want to discourage him from doing that, because then next time, he'd skip the growling and go straight to attacking. I came out of the room, ready to talk to my brother about how this is what I've been talking about. But he was furious, yelled that my dog is a menace who should be put down, and left. I completely understood his reaction. That's his daughter, and he was afraid for her, and nothing else mattered to him. But he hasn't calmed down at all since this happened, and won't talk to me except to say my dog needs to be put down and he won't be speaking to me until it's done. He's also tried to involve our parents, who said they will absolutely not be getting involved. They know my niece's behavior with my dog has been a problem in the past. I have not heard from my sister-in-law at all, which makes me think she might agree with me. Knowing her personality type, I don't really think she'd sit out a fight like this if she thought my dog was dangerous. The way I see it, this is solely my fault and my brother's fault. I shouldn't have allowed my niece to harass my dog. I knew what could happen, and I was more concerned about how upset my brother got when I tried to bring it up, than I was about my niece's safety. I should have just said my niece wasn't allowed around my dog until she got a bit older, and dealt with whatever fallout there was within my family. Similarly, my brother should have kept a better eye on his kid, and not been so defensive when I tried to explain the problem. My dog, on the other hand, put up with being harassed for over a year, and when he was finally pushed to his limits, signaled very loudly, and harmlessly, that he needed to be removed from the situation. He is not dangerous, and I will not put him down. My brother is now saying that the entire family has sided with the dog over his child, which is not the case. It's just that there are lots of other solutions to this problem. I am perfectly happy to crate my dog when they come over, or leave him in another room, or just never have them over again and hang out somewhere else. There's no reason for my niece to ever see my dog again, and I'd be happy to talk over a solution with him. It's just that he won't talk to me at all, and I don't know what to do. Should I give him more time to cool off? Should I go over to his house and try to talk? I don't want to ruin this relationship. We are very close, but I'm just not putting my dog down over this. When did you realize your parents were bad at parenting? When my father almost beat me to death with a leather strap when I was a couple of months shy of 4 years old. I was small and still sitting in a high chair without the tray so I could reach the table. He yanked me up by the back of my shirt with one hand and started unbuckling his belt with the other. I remember hearing it snap through the loops as we headed off to the living room. It was a brutal beating for which I should have been taken for medical attention. That did not happen. My mother sat in the kitchen with my much older brother and sister and did not intervene to help for what seemed like a very long time. I was bleeding from the strap marks that had cut into my skin. Though the beating seemed frenzied and out of control, later I realized the only place he didn't hit was right in the face where it couldn't be hidden. Finally, my mother came into the room and said, "Ken, you better stop, you are going to pull her shoulder out of joint or break her arm." He dropped me to the floor. It took months for the wounds to heal and they hid me at home with my grandmother. The night of the beating I was made to go back to the dinner table in blood and urine-soaked clothes because I had wet my pants in the process. I was ordered that they did not want to hear or see any more crying. Silent tears rolled down my face and I got the hiccups, but the pain set in and sheer terror kept me quiet. My mother looked around the table and said, "This will never be mentioned again, neither in this house or outside of it." And it wasn't. Later, when I started to school, my mother worked there as an accountant. I was a beaten-down child, introverted, had spent my childhood isolated way out in the country miles from town where the school was located. I looked like an easy and timid target. I had not made any childhood friendships. I did not know how to be a child. At home I was to be seen and not heard unless spoken to, and I entertained myself mostly with books checked out of the county library. My friends were farm animals, cats and dogs. It was a very small school and all grades were on one campus. I became the target of bullies starting in about the 5th grade, and this lasted through high school. I was always ganged up on in a corner of the bathroom or the locker room where we changed for PE. Staff members knew this was happening, but nothing was ever said or done. When I told my mother and asked if I could fight back or put something in my book bag that I could hit them with, she said no. That if I fought back and caused trouble she would be fired from her job. A complete and total lie. My father said he thought it was kid stuff, that I had to be doing something to bring this upon myself, and he didn't want to hear anything else about it. These were just a couple of the many, many things that happened over the course of my nightmare childhood. My brother and sister both graduated and left home before I started to school. I was a surprise, unplanned and unwanted child, and this was no secret, so I knew it very early in life. I knew I was badly damaged emotionally, but had been taught to pretend and to keep up appearances in our small community, which caused even more damage. I left the day after graduation and never looked back. I eventually got a lot of therapy and learned how truly horrible my parents really were. I have survived, but those things that happen when you are that young stay with you the rest of your life, and I have always wondered what I would have been like if I had actually had parents who were even the slightest bit competent to raise a child.
Terrible company abuses their coworker, so you won't believe how she ends up making $250 an hour in the end. The build-up to the revenge is that this person had a horrible employer. She worked HR and managed payroll at what was effectively a nursing home. I don't know that they call themselves that, but it's what they are. The company had a bit of a good old boys club going on, with all of the highest level management being older men, who all did less work and got more pay than pretty much everyone else. There were regular complaints from women about being mistreated, and many women were fired for absolutely absurd reasons, followed by their male coworkers getting raises. That in and of itself was bad, but it's not what instigated the need for revenge. What caused the burning desire to get back at the company was when the company fired my friend's manager, who was a woman, because she took a week off after literally breaking a leg, badly. The HR department was already badly understaffed, so my friend had to take on the responsibilities of this manager, without any pay bonus. She requested a pay bonus multiple times, denied each time. A month or so later, the company hires a new manager to replace the old one, at nearly twice the salary. This new manager is an older man. I'm not entirely sure what this guy actually did during the day, because my friend continued to do all of the managerial tasks, and she knows that for a fact because the guy's account didn't have access to the systems he needed access to, and he never asked for that access. For 6 months, my friend showed this manager issues with their system, including payroll, and explained that she was not only the only employee who knew how to use the payroll system, but she was the only one with access to it. The misogynistic butthead ignored her, and made regular comments about how she was replaceable and useless. One day, she loses her crap. She set up a bot with her credentials to automatically assign her pay each pay period, according to her actual salary, so not stealing or anything. She then carefully plans her next move, and puts in her 2-week notice, right before a large department-wide week off, and right before her only coworker has a 2-week vacation. She wouldn't have time to train the coworker even if the coworker was in the country. The manager still dismissed her, thinking he could just hire someone who knew what they were doing. Little did he know, she had tweaked with the payroll software over her time there. Nothing super awful, but it was very different from what the base software was. She was the only person who knew how to properly use it, and the only person in the whole company, including the CEO, who had access to the necessary numbers to actually run the payroll. When she leaves, after the 2 weeks, the company has 2 whole pay periods where they do not pay their employees. They can't, but my friend still gets paid, because they never disabled her automatic payment thing. They couldn't. Eventually they called her and basically begged her to consult with them on their payroll. For the past 6 months she has been paid $250 an hour, for 5 hours a week, to run the company's payroll. Fully remote, even though it was an in-person job before. And to top it all off, she doesn't even actually work the 5 hours. She wrote a script on her personal device to process payroll for her. She just has to press one button. She's working another job now, but damn, she really kicked them in the butt for their crap. My mom basically killed me and my whole family is fine with it. My mom had a lot of issues. She would Dr. Hop as a kid a lot. Not medical but mental health. She would scream until I'd have a breakdown, then use that to tell doctors I was bipolar. I got on a bunch of meds. She Dr. Hopped a ton, fought insurance. Paid out of pocket cause TRICARE kept denying stuff. Switched doctors when they wouldn't do exact meds at the dosages she preferred. Recently I found out she purposefully didn't get me diagnosed with autism cause they would have had to reevaluate bipolar disorder and I would have no longer qualified for a diagnosis. I got an autism diagnosis as an adult but I no longer qualify for bipolar based on my own stuff. That's with long-term observation. The meds, 3 of them cause liver issues. Out of the many, 5 of them were 3 times the recommended top dosage for my body weight. 1 isn't recommended in minors or even in adults more than 2 years due to liver damage complications. But if you switch enough you can always find someone. My liver enzymes tests are horrid. I don't even drink. I am 23. The damage was done before anything could be done about it. My bilirubin levels are so high. Past where jaundice normally occurs, so I'm surprised I'm not. I thought I'd finally have the freedom as an adult to build a life that was happy. But even with a transplant only 75% of people live for another 5 years. I eat healthy, drink water, I run, I do things cause I want my body to last and be healthy cause I only have one body. I wanted it to last. I can't stand being around her. Knowing her actions are literally killing me. I hate how she got my grandparents to minimize it to a situation where she didn't know. It wasn't her choice. It was the doctor's. She 100% knew. My brother overheard her lying to the doctor so many times. I also have to live with the fact that my mom killed me. And everyone I know just acts like that's normal. It's not normal. It's not normal to try so hard and not have a chance. Most days I'm fine. I'm unbelievably happy. There's so much perspective that you get when you face the fact that you may not have a choice to get a full life. But other days I'm so unbelievably angry. At my mom. My family. That even if I'm living the way I want to for me and do everything right I may not even have the chance to build up my life. It absolutely hurts. In every way. How did you embarrass yourself in public? My girlfriend has been supplying me with vegan sandwiches to take to work ever since we moved in together at the beginning of the month. I do not like them one bit, they're cheeks, but I didn't want to make my girlfriend feel bad, so I accepted the sandwiches every morning and gave them to homeless people without my girlfriend knowing. It was a win-win-win. My girlfriend was happy, I was happy, and hopefully so were the random homeless people who ate the sandwiches. However, no one was happy after yesterday when I decided to give my vegan sandwich to a homeless boy on the street. The boy was with a woman and a dog. The woman thanked me at first and encouraged the boy to eat the sandwich. I waved goodbye and walked away. Mid-walk, the sandwich hit the back of my head. I turned around and noticed the woman approaching me and yelling, "He's just a boy, shame on you." When I asked the woman if she just threw the sandwich at me, she frantically referred to a note that apparently fell out when the boy was busy unwrapping the sandwich. The woman closed the distance between us and planted the note in my hand. I recognized the handwriting. It was my GF. The note said, "I want you to tell me what a bad little vegan I am when I'm under you with your PP and me." I looked at the woman and said there must have been a misunderstanding. The woman called me a creep and instructed her dog to attack me, but thankfully the dog did nothing. I apologized to the woman and explained that I didn't know about the note. The woman repeatedly called me a creep and said if I was going to use sandwiches to prey on children, the least I could do was not make the sandwich look like it was grown in a garden. She was really sassy. I backed away from the woman and walked in the opposite direction as fast as possible. Towards the end of the day, when I was done at work and home again, I said nothing to my girlfriend about the sandwich incident. I was hoping to keep it a secret, forever, but then my girlfriend and I did the deed and my brain cells died. Mid-noggin, I thought of the note and called my girlfriend a bad little vegan without thinking. She playfully pinched me and said she was beginning to doubt if I was ever going to respond to all the dirty notes she included with my sandwiches. Notes, plural. I lied and said I was playing the long game. Building suspense. My girlfriend asked if I was keen to do that thing she wrote in Tuesday's note. I said okay. My girlfriend lied on her back and said she was ready. I was supposed to do something, but I had no idea what that something was. The random homeless person who got the Tuesday vegan sandwich probably knew. I went down on my girlfriend, which was confusing for her because she asked what I was doing. I shrugged and said I didn't remember Tuesday's note. My girlfriend narrowed her eyes and asked what about Wednesday's note. No comment. My girlfriend asked if I actually read any of the other notes. I lowered my head in shame and confessed to giving her sandwiches away. I came clean about everything, including the homeless boy situation and the fact that I didn't enjoy vegan food. My girlfriend nodded and gave me a very cold I apologized for not being honest. My girlfriend said she understood and got dressed. I said I was still willing to do the Tuesday note thing, but my girlfriend got into bed and said goodnight. It's safe to say I'm not her favorite person right now. I truly don't know what to do anymore. Everything is over for me. I've lost my girlfriend of 6 years, my home and my business. She's happy to move on and doesn't need/want me anymore. I'm now back where I was 7 years ago. At home with my family. They are comforting me and trying to help me through it. I was physically, emotionally and sexually abused during my childhood. The people comforting me now are the ones who enabled this. I feel disgusted with myself that I need this help, as I see the fatal irony in it. It's this or nothing. The mess I am as a person is rooted in what happened to me when I was just a boy. I've tried so hard, I truly have. I wanted to be a better person. A normal person. I almost got there on occasion. The problem is that this is written into me. It's coded in me like my DNA. I will always be scared. I will always catastrophize. I'm an anxiety and depression-riddled mess who thinks about suicide regularly and now, daily. I tried to take responsibility for everything I could change, and I changed so much. I found a home in her. She was my family, and I truly felt safe. I would have given her every last ounce of me, and I did. It wasn't good enough again. Ultimately, this was the first person to truly see all I am as a person and accept me for a time. However, she didn't want me. She saw all of who I am and decided I wasn't worth it anymore and threw me away. Not one person, family or otherwise, truly likes me or appreciates me for who I am. Friends only know you so far, and I even think they are better off without me. In the process of becoming a better person and shedding the way I was raised, I wasn't the best friend at times, and they deserved better. Am I destined to be alone? I had learned to manage being alone. I opened myself up to her and let her in. Now, being alone is unbearably painful and lonely. It's self-pitying, but I now wonder if something in me just makes people detest me. My own family didn't love me. The children in school smelled the weakness in me, the unwashed, timid, easy target who had been broken by his home. Now, the others who truly see me see something they don't want and don't like. I wish I could rip that part out of me, but I guess it just is me. If everyone sees this, then I honestly believe that it may mean I'm not supposed to be here. Maybe I'm just taking up someone else's slot and pulling everyone I love down? I give up. I'm weak. I always have been. It's time to accept what I am. I don't have the fight anymore.
My brother proposed to a girl who turned out to be a gold digger, so I convinced him to break it off with her. My older brother lives in LA, and was dating this girl for a long time. She has a BA, makes about $40,000 a year. We thought she was very nice and very sweet, but some of the things she said felt odd. Once she came home with our brother, and saw our parents' cars out front, Audi and Jaguar. My brother told her that our parents only ever had used cars that were a little run down, and soaked in crackers/spilled juice/soccer sweat from practice, etc. So when our youngest sibling finished high school, our parents decided to treat themselves for once in their entire lives and bought new cars, after working 80-hour weeks and grinding for most of their lives. She laughed and said, "It better not take you more than a few years to buy me one of those." My brother drives a relatively new Jeep. My brother decided to propose and had me help pick it out. We decided to get her one with a middle stone that was 2.5 carats, with a baguette on each side that was about 1 carat each. Brother proposed, she said yes, but she was upset, saying she expected a bigger ring since he makes enough to buy her 5K ring, and that she can't handle him acting cheap all the time. He was really upset about this because this ring cost about 40K and had amazing clarity, color, etc. He researched it excessively and made sure that it was the exact design ring she wanted. He called me and got mad at me because I was the one who said he should get the main stone to be 2.5K because bigger than that looks a little tacky and showy. I told him that this is probably God waving a red flag and giving him a chance to get out. I told him that someone who can't appreciate that 40K, especially since that's how much she makes a year, is a lot to spend on a ring. She didn't care about how hard he tried to please her, just about the money. He thought it over and agreed and broke it off. She called me. After he asked her to move out and told me I was a meddling bitch and my brother will never get married when his family is so nosy. I asked my friends about it and they agreed with me. They said that the person the engagement is with is far more important than the ring. I am so happy this girl won't be joining the family.
Fathers who've abandoned their families, why'd you do it? I was 20 when my daughter was born. Living about 4.5 hours away from home, friends, family, and everything familiar. Never wanted to be a dad, thanks to a pretty crummy upbringing. When things took a turn for the worse in the relationship, I bailed. I knew I couldn't survive up there on my own. Young, immature, crappy job, etc. So I left during a heated argument in the middle of the night. I kinda just escaped. I pushed her out of my mind and did things of my own accord. Paid child support when I could, birthday presents, maybe a phone call every once in a while. There was no father/daughter relationship. When you're several states away and never see her, it's a lot easier to pretend she didn't exist. Having no connection, it wasn't the hardest thing to do. I lived my own life with not much thought about her. This went on for a few years. I made a move to the West Coast and during a trip back home in the East, I took a visit to see her. I remember crashing on my ex's couch and being awoken by a tiny person. She was 4 at this point. Me and her mother both agreed that I don't bring up who I am or try to play dad. Just spend the day with her and enjoy ourselves. It was incredibly awkward for me at first. But, slowly, things fell into places. Watching her stumble in winter boots, listen to her relay stories, experiment with new food, lemon poppy seed muffin, dance while we wait for the bus. Thanks to an odd encounter with an employee at an American Eagle, she called me dad. Surreal moment where I locked eyes with her, then her mom. It felt warm and beautiful and loving. We both ignored the comment, but everything inside of me was raging with emotion. We spent the remainder of the day goofing around and assembling a bed. After we put her to said bed, me and her mom talked for a few hours. It was an easy realization for me after everything that happened that day, I needed to be there. I'll skip most of the details, but the visit happened in October 2010. I made plans to live there by 2012. I moved back home from Cali, worked several jobs, saved, planned everything meticulously so I wouldn't be forced back. In December 2011, I made the move up north. Our relationship was essentially friendship for a few months. She didn't have a father figure in her life and I wasn't about to drop a "Hey surprise, I'm the dad you've been missing." In the beginning it was her coming over for a Friday night sleepover or random park trips. Figuring out everything and how to be a dad. It was intense and the hardest thing I've ever had to do. Still learning, as I think every dad never stops figuring things out. I eventually told her who I was, and it wasn't this big emotional moment. I was just her dad, and she was happy to finally have one around. She doesn't realize I was missing for most of her childhood, and it's a conversation I'm not looking forward to having. I'll be honest and upfront. Hopefully by then she'll understand how much I regret it. If not, then I'll work on patching everything up. Won't quit this time around. Our relationship is perfect now. I have partial custody, she stays with me half of the week, we have paint fights and bake cakes, play flashlight tag in cemeteries, etc. My life is amazing and I wouldn't trade it for anything. I can't hate on the deadbeat dad thing because I was one. I totally understand the mentality of not giving a F about your kid, since I was a guy who had that going for him. I want to say it was immaturity and fear of fatherhood that held me back, but who knows? I'm sure it's different for everyone. What is the most disgusting thing you've ever done? I was in the shower earlier tonight and decided to go to town on myself. It's been a while since I had my back door played with, so I decided to spice things up by taking a bar of soap and pressing it into my back door while I was doing my thing. It wasn't a new bar, closer to a sliver of Irish Spring, maybe a half of an inch thick and maybe 4 inches long. Not really the best choice for me, but there was nothing else around and it was a spur of the moment decision. Anyway, it slips into my back door about halfway and then disappears completely, like it got sucked up. I stick my fingers in to check if I can get it back out and can just barely feel it in there. Part of me wanted to just push as hard as I could while squatting in the shower, but I didn't want to accidentally make a mess. So I dried up quickly and go to the toilet. After a good 5 minutes of exertion and feeling some things pass into the bowl, I look in and see no sign of the soap, just 2 regular logs. This is where I started to panic slightly. In a moment of sheer desperation, I picked up some coconut oil and lathered it onto my hands, then decided to check again. Nothing. Goddamn, I'm not really sure what to do now. It doesn't feel like anything is stuck in me, just the fact that it is lodged somewhere up there is really worrying. I'm planning on buying enemas tomorrow to see if it'll help, but if passing regular stool didn't push it out, I'm doubting that'll do much. And I don't think it'll just melt away either, since the melting temp of bar soap is apparently higher than human body temp. Hoping so much that I'm wrong about one or both of those points. Edit, I got it out. My girlfriend came over and I told her she needed to use her strap on me and maybe it will help get it out. She laughed but was amused. Well, ladies and gentlemen, the soap is out. I am being falsely accused of creeping on my mentally disabled friend by her mom. I went to high school with this girl who is 5 years younger than me. I wasn't really friends with her, however we were friendly with each other. 3 years later she reached out to me and wanted to get coffee. I was eager to do so. She has always been a little different and I thought she may just have some learning disabilities. I have hung out with her just twice within the past couple of months, and both times we have met up for lunch and coffee. Everything has been going well and she's asked me to go to some concerts with her. Again, we have only hung out twice since high school. Both times I dropped her off at home after lunch and came inside to have some nice conversations with her mother. Not too long, as the house freaked me out. The mother had a mental disability herself if I was to guess, and she was a cat lady. I also saw what I thought was a dead mouse in the kitchen. I left right after I saw the mouse twitch. This morning my mom was talking to a person who knows this girl and her family, and this person revealed something shocking about them. She said that my friend's mom said to her husband, and I quote, "My daughter is extremely vulnerable." In fact, she just reconnected with a high school friend who is creeping on her. I am in disbelief. I have so many emotions going through me right now. All I wanted was to be nice to this girl, and now it is going around that I am creeping her. I'm worried that this false accusation could affect my life. I am on scholarship, and if this got back to my college I would certainly lose it. I never even initiated any of our hangouts. It seems like her mom made this all up on her own because my friend is texting me like normal. Edit, my friend's mom just outed me on social media and the school is doing an investigation and told me they're likely going to have to remove my scholarship regardless of the findings. What's the strangest conversation you've accidentally eavesdropped on? I was once in a Starbucks in Boston and witnessed a breakup which was immediately followed a failed proposal attempt. It was the craziest thing. The dude was very into her and her body language did not reply in a copacetic manner. He confessed his love to her. She replied that it wasn't gonna work and she might need some time. He replied, "We have the rest of our lives to figure it out, so you have time." He got down on a knee, pulled out a ring. She stood up and said, "This is what I am talking about." "You don't listen." She asked him to stand up. He said with tears in his eyes, "Why?" "I am still waiting for an answer." She gathered her things, took left out the back. The man sat back down and finished his frappuccino while crying. I refer to the story as the saddest cold coffee ever. Didn't hear the full conversation, but I walked in on 2 employees at a convenience store with the conversation ending with the phrase, "And that's when we hid the clams."
My boyfriend told me he was a doctor, but then I walked in on him working behind the counter of a Taco Bell. I tried to call him about it, but now he is refusing to answer his phone. My 24F boyfriend, 32M, told me he was a doctor. About 4 months into our relationship, I walked in on him behind the counter at Taco Bell. I met my boyfriend Freddie waiting in line at a coffee shop. I noticed he was wearing a healthcare worker lanyard, so I asked him what he did for a living, and he told me that he was a consultant at the local hospital. So I asked him about his specialism and he told me obstetrics, which was a blessing because my sister had recently told me and my family that she was pregnant. So I responded with excitement, which he clearly enjoyed, and we ended up having a coffee together. He was such a gentleman and even bought me some lunch as well, and we exchanged phone numbers. However, something odd happened at the time of this number exchange. Looking back, it felt pretty innocuous, which would explain why I subconsciously chose to ignore it. As he gave me his phone so I could type in my number, I casually asked him where he studied medicine and he replied, "I did my undergrad in biology at an Ivy League." but failed to tell me which college he went to. I wondered why he didn't name the school, plus I'm pretty sure an undergrad in biology wasn't going to cut it in the medical world. I should have known then that he was a lying sack of poop, but I am a sucker for the typical tall, dark and handsome look, and he even had blue eyes like Superman, but sadly he turned out to be your regular run-of-the-mill average man. Everything was going great at the start. The intimacy was amazing and he was very romantic with me despite not wanting to spend any money on our dates. Then last night, I happened to walk into Taco Bell after my shift at work. I looked over at the counter and saw a man who looked just like my boyfriend, same jawline, hair color and height, and then it hit me like a bus. It was him. We clocked eyes, and I'm sure my face looked pissed as I walked up to the counter because he refused to look me in the eye as he gave me a tentative, "Welcome to Taco Bell, can I take your order?" I stared at him for a minute, thinking about how to go about ordering his PP on a platter, but instead, I calmly told him what I wanted, with extra betrayal on the side, without addressing him by name. I then went home to process what I had just seen and to call my friend Sarah. As we sat discussing his lie, Sarah said that when she saw him last week he was walking down the high street in a long white coat carrying a black leather briefcase. I said, "Are you telling me he's been walking around town dressed as a doctor and then working at a Taco Bell at night?" I stared down at my taco. Even that felt like a lie now as we unpacked our entire relationship. It has now been 5 days since Taco Gate. I have tried to call him to talk about it but he won't answer.
Ex-prisoners, what is the most terrifying thing you saw in prison? My cellmate was this tiny little woman in her 40s with crazy big eyes who would sit on top of her bunk and chant Mongolian songs for all hours of the night despite her being Polish. She had a reputation for being nuts and just straight up weird. 21-year-old me was freaked out when I got moved into a cell with her. She was on the top bunk, me on bottom, and she did, in fact, sit up at all hours of the night chanting and talking to herself. I called my mom one night and she pulled up her case information. Apparently, she was serving a sentence for taking the life of 3 men in a brutal way for doing unspeakable things to her daughter and also taking her life. Fast forward a few weeks, this woman and I became closer than I ever imagined possible. She became like an overprotective mother bear to me who would also have bedroom fun with me at nighttime. I started calling her Mama Bear and she called me Baby Bear, and she made sure everyone knew to leave her baby bear alone. Fast forward to one evening after dinner. Every night I took my shower at the same time after chow. By the time I got out, Mama Bear would be back from her Zumba classes and jump in right after me. So one night, Mama Bear is still out when this big girl, real big girl, cuts in front of me for the shower. Shower line is always a pretty big deal in there, but I didn't really care because I wasn't in a hurry anyways and I figured I would just take mine later or after Mama. Then Mama Bear walked in. First thing she asked me was why I hadn't taken my shower yet. I explained the situation and calmly told her someone else got in before me, but it was okay and I would shower later. It was not okay. Mama Bear got the craziest look in her eyes and says nobody cuts Mama Bear or Baby Bear in line. I follow her as she's storming towards the bathroom. This woman then goes into a blind rage and proceeds to rip her clothes off fully, rip down the shower curtain, and climb into the shower with the big girl who cut the line in front of me. The whole time Mama Bear isn't blinking while Big Girl is looking stunned. Then Mama Bear, while staring into this woman's soul, snatches the soap right out of Big Girl's hand, starts soaping herself up with it while screaming at her, "You wanna cut in line, you big whale." "Okay Tubby, cut in line, we showering together. God damn, your kebab rolls stink, shave that." She then put the bar of soap into Big Girl's back door. Big Girl didn't even wash off. She just grabbed her towel and ran out of there as fast as she could with the soap in her back door. Mama Bear then finished her shower without soap and went on to play cards like nothing ever happened. Am I the a-hole for yelling at my girlfriend to stop effing eating? I'm 26 and my sister is 23. She runs a bakery business and she's been struggling lately to keep up with orders because she's been short-staffed. She does a lot of orders for wedding cakes that require custard or marmalade fillings, and I offered to help her out by making these fillings at home and bringing them to her so she has less work to do. Unfortunately, the past 4 times I've made these fillings, my 24-year-old girlfriend has literally dipped her nasty chubby fingers into the filling jars and contaminated them because, in her words, she just wanted to try some. I've tried explaining to her that she can't dip her nasty fingers in and contaminate the entire batch, because then I have to remake it. I said she should use a spoon like a decent human being with class and take some out if she wants to try so bad, but she just pouts like a child and says that she likes using her fingers because it takes her back to her childhood. Today, I was trying to finish some chocolate custard to send it over to my sister really fast because she was running late on a wedding cake order for an important client. I told my girlfriend beforehand to not eat the custard, and if she really wanted to please use a spoon. I get out of the shower, and what do I see? She has her disgusting fingers in it again. I totally lost it because this is the 5th time she blatantly disregarded what I said, and I yelled at her and told her to stop effing eating the food I'm making, because it's not for her and she's contaminating it. She got all sensitive and started crying and got mad at me for fat shaming her, even though I made no comment on her weight and she has no history of weight issues or eating disorders. I know I was harsh, but she kept pushing my limits. Am I the a-hole? Reddit, what is one way you have seen someone screw up their life with just a couple of words? This is a real story. A few years ago I was an avid World of Warcraft player and one of my best friends had finally started playing the game. This was great for our friendship because I had moved to another state and it was something we could do that was basically like us getting to hang out. We'd log into World of Warcraft a few times a week after work and shoot the shit over Skype. At this time he was also dating this girl who also played World of Warcraft. Their relationship had been going strong for about a year and she was starting to get to the point where she wanted to move in with him. However, he had been dodging that subject and stating he'd never lived with a girl before, which he had, and wasn't ready to go there just yet. One day him and I are on a Skype call doing our World of Warcraft thing. His girlfriend is also in the room with him playing on his Xbox off in the background. I start talking about my wife or something, going into a funny story about living with her, which we get a chuckle out of it. My friend tries to one-up the story by telling me something he experienced while living with his former girlfriend, and he said, "Dude, when I lived with Melissa, blah blah blah." Immediately my heart sank. I sent him a DM via World of Warcraft that simply said, "You done effed up, dude, you just said you lived with your ex." And I swear to Christ I heard his balls shoot up from his nutsack to his throat over Skype. He replied back in game, "It's cool bro, I don't think she heard, she's playing Xbox. Let's just play it off." In my mind there's no way she didn't hear that shit. I pictured her picking up that sentence like when Peter Parker went into Spider-Sense mode during the first Spider-Man movie and he could hear every little detail around him, including a fly buzzing through the air. Anyway, the tone of our Skype conversion went from laughing to awkward silence pretty quick. It's funny because I was legit nervous even though it had nothing to do with me. My wingman instincts were in full panic mode. We played for a few more minutes and he DMs me, "She just got up and left without even saying anything, I gotta go." That was it, he was effing dead. Those who have survived car accidents, what was it like? My aunt and uncle invited me to come down with them for a wedding party they were having at their house in Logan for one of their friends. I accepted, packed my stuff to stay for a weekend and got into their car. We were just chatting while driving through Logan Canyon from my house to theirs. It was nice because I hadn't really talked to them since I moved up there. Well, all of a sudden I hear my aunt say, Steve. I look up and see a red truck right in front of us. It hits and I black out. I wake up in a lot of pain and everything smells weird and I couldn't talk. My aunt gets out of the car and is panicking and asking if my uncle and I are okay, which I'm still surprised that she could to this day because she had a broken disc in her back. My uncle had died on impact. I learned later that he turned the car just in time to take the full brunt of everything. Something that still makes me very uncomfortable is recalling this event. I can still clearly remember him breathing, but it was gurgling and like he was trying to breathe. Apparently his brain had split in two or something? I don't know if that's a thing that can happen, I just remember being told that. I get upset thinking about it, I feel like I heard him dying. Everyone thought I walked out of there okay until a few days later my intestines burst because a portion of them had been killed, though I walked out of the car with broken glasses and a bruised arm but somehow no broken bones. Paramedics found a note in the glove box saying, "I'm sorry you guys had to suffer this experience. I really hope I didn't hurt either of you. I wanted to die alongside those I love, so my final moments would be happy ones. You need to help me cope. I recently bought a semi-detached house and it's proving to be a lot more work than anticipated. We're having to rip everything down to its bonework. My new neighbors are a bit elusive. I know Therese at least a dad and a daughter and the daughter has additional needs. We've been working for 3 months and she has been having screaming fits every time we work with anything remotely noisy. There is also a son and I know there is at least a mom somewhere but I've never seen her. Recently we've moved to the bathroom which seems to line up with her daughter's bedroom. Now, the bathroom has been the worst room yet. Literally everything has to go, sink, bath, shower, toilet, windows, even the walls have to go. It's bad. We started 4 days ago. Immediately she started screaming, so loud we could hear her over the tools and through our ear protection. When we continued the next day her dad banged on our door. Explained that she's autistic and we're invading her space, apparently the vibrations through the wall shook something off a shelf and broke. I apologized and he seemed happy with that. Later that evening he came back, clearly in from work, and started laying into me and my brother, the one helping me. Called us inconsiderate bastards, left again. Yesterday he was red in the face with rage, asking if we're really that heartless to keep overwhelming her. I did catch sight of his daughter and she did look distraught, so I apologized again, but explained that I have to do it. Today he came knocking, again, and demanded we move on from our drilling. He explained that his daughter hasn't been able to recover from meltdowns, that it's been a constant battle for days. He and she are both exhausted. I apologized, again, but told him it was his job as a father to help her cope and we should not have to hinder our work for a child we don't even know. He left, pissed as all hell, and ever since my wife has been giving me the cold shoulder. We're expecting and she's calling me an asshole, saying we would expect the same decency when our baby arrives. I understand why the dad is annoyed, but I am on a time crunch and my brother and I are basically doing this solo, obviously excluding the hired help for things I'm not well versed in. We're continuing on with our work but my wife still isn't talking to me. She called me a meat and I've been delegated to the couch. The neighbors also seemed pretty pissed when we left. Today I effed up by telling my kid I was selling him to the circus. My son is almost 5. Right now he is very much in the, I'm not tired phase. We put him to bed a bit ago but he did not want to go to sleep, so he just sat in there flipping through books and playing with quiet toys. And, of course, popping out occasionally to remind us he wasn't tired. I just put my 11-year-old daughter to bed. Some nights we go to the Bing AI and have it draw random pictures. Kids think it's hilarious. We tried to do it tonight but Bing didn't want to play so she got a bit whiny about it. I stayed in there and talked to her for a minute, then she requested I bring her some water. All this background sets the scene that I was very slightly frustrated with my children. I come back with the water for my daughter and tell her, I have good news and bad news. The circus just offered me a lot of money for you kids. Good night. I love you. She giggles and I leave and meet my son in the hall. He looks up at me and asks, how much money did they offer by the way? He is also using, by the way, a lot today. I told him $647 million. He goes, oh okay, good night. Love you. And goes back to bed. I thought nothing of it because I make jokes like that all the time and he always acts like he knows I'm joking. I go hop in the shower and minutes later hear, hey. Maybe you can explain your side of the story, because I have a 5-year-old who thinks you are selling him for lots of money. It immediately clicked, and I admit I was split 50-50 between feelings of guilt and laughter. Apparently he went and found my wife and told her dad says he's going to sell us for a lot of money and I just don't know if he's joking or not. It all worked out okay, I think. My wife and I both explained to him that we love him very much and would never even think about selling him. I don't think he believed us. I exposed my abusive and neglectful mother at my dad's obituary. My dad has been chronically ill for the past 15 years. As his health declined he relied more on my mother for things. Prior to this she was never a great person and fully took advantage of his disability and mobility issues as he declined. For years she claimed to be separated and divorced, while talking to other men on the internet and in real life. She made claims many times she was going to move away and marry someone else. In addition she took advantage of him financially. She would spend his savings and instead of buying him medicine, she would spend it on herself. My dad was too weak to do anything about it, but I saw how much this hurt him. We tried every legal avenue we could find to have her kicked out, arrested, or force her out, but those attempts were met with responses that it was a civil matter and there was nothing that could be done. Throughout the course of the marriage, she had laid hands on him many times, yelled at him a lot, and would call him useless when he was in chronic pain. She blasted him on social media a lot, and fabricated fake evidence in case he ever tried to divorce and expose her. She flat out told him she would use this fabricated evidence to take him to the cleaners if it came to it. My father made me a durable POA and added me to all his accounts. I'd tried for years to get my dad to move in with me but he wasn't leaving the house he worked so hard to pay for, even if my mother was still present at it. I brought him home on hospice the day after Thanksgiving and made sure his final days were the best they could be. After meeting with the funeral home to carry out his final wishes I was told they required consent from my mother to allow me to cremate him. It was no surprise she initially told me no and only agreed after I allowed her to keep the Social Security survivor benefits, which would have been hers anyway. I wrote his obituary and left her out of it. There was not a single word or mention he'd ever been married or had a spouse. I didn't feel she deserved to be recognized or viewed as a grieving widow when she spent their marriage as a crappy spouse in person. She lost her mind and there were many questions from friends and family alike. I've spent years in therapy working through maternal narcissistic mistreatment and believe if she didn't want me to talk about it she shouldn't have done it. When people asked about it I was honest about the years of mistreatment my father and I endured from her. I've completely ruined the public image and victim complex she spent years creating. I might be the villain and a-hole in this scenario but I'd do it again in a heartbeat. Realized how meaningless life in the 21st century really is. I work at a large sortable fulfillment center owned by Amazon. I'm not going to go off on Amazon's work rules in this post. They are demanding, but offer good pay for unskilled labor and have excellent benefits. The job is way below my education and experience level, but I took the job knowing full well that it would be demanding. It's the inventory and volume of inventory that causes me to lose hope for humanity. Our facility is almost 1 million square feet, and it's stuffed to the gills with crap people don't need. The sheer number of gadgets, gizmos, trinkets, decorations and toys contained in this warehouse is mind-boggling. The number of intercourse toys alone is staggering. Each and every day, an average of 70 semi-trailers packed full of useless items back into our dock where product is offloaded. Since the inventory levels remain fairly constant, a similar volume of shipments are made to customers daily as well. Amazon has approximately 175 fulfillment centers, so simple math says the inbound/outbound volume of this crap is somewhere around 4.5 million truckloads a year, and growing. That may be off to a degree, but is directionally correct. Each of those inbound shipments comes to us in a corrugated box. Most of the time it's a box within a box. Frequently it's in a box that's in a box that's in a box. That's a crap ton of corrugated cardboard boxes. And then there's the outbound boxes. Virtually all of the products are enclosed in some sort of plastic, be it a poly sleeve, a plastic clamshell or some other sort of manufactured packaging. I can't begin to estimate how much petroleum is needed to make all this plastic packaging. This doesn't even include the fuel used to transport product from raw materials to finished goods to China port to USA port to distribution centers to fulfillment centers and finally to Betty Sue and Bob. My guess is 80% plus of this stuff is manufactured in China or a neighboring ASEAN market. There have to be hundreds of millions of people employed at finished goods factories in China producing these goods. Add to that all the people involved with inland, ocean freight and customer deliveries. And then there's Walmart, Target, maybe 100 other big box retailers and a slew of smaller venues who sell these items. Amazon isn't the only game in town. My guess is that of the 7.8 billion people on this planet, at least 25% are involved somehow in this distribution machine. Simple math again says that 2+ billion people make their livelihoods in some form, shape or fashion serving Amazon and its competitors. And then there's the customers, so this is what the meaning of life has come down to. A significant portion of the world's human resources have life occupations producing, selling and delivering products that nobody really needs. At the same time, the sheer volume of consumption of resources to feed this beast blows my mind. And the consumers can't get enough of it. It's simply depressing.
My horrible stepdaughter decided to not include her biological father in her wedding ceremony because he was limping. So everybody in the family decided not to support financially. I have been married to Kate for over a decade. Kate has 2 daughters from her previous marriage, Selena and Amy. We have a daughter Lynn together. 2 years ago Selena got married, and although I was invited to the wedding, I wasn't a part of the ceremony. Selena is very close with her biological dad and doesn't see me as a father figure, which I respect because we still have an amazing relationship. Amy considers me a father figure, though. I also have a very good relationship with Kate's ex and the girl's bio dad, Ron. We bonded over football and we went on many games together. I don't have many friends since I moved to another state, but I consider Ron a very good friend of mine. Amy is planning a wedding, and this is when the conflict ensues. She wants me to be the one to walk her down the aisle and the one to dance with her. I felt very honored until I found out the reasoning behind this decision. Around 5 years ago, Ron suffered a serious injury that affected his mobility. Fortunately, he isn't paralyzed or anything, but Amy claimed that his limp would get in the way of having nice wedding videos. I was shocked and appalled and disappointed in how cold and brutal she treated him. Ron was very involved in her life and loved her so much, and his condition wasn't even an issue for Selena when she was getting married. I politely declined her request, and this is when shit hit the fan. Ron found out that she wanted me to take his place, and he decided to not participate in the wedding at all, also deciding to not contribute financially. His wife, Belle, called Amy and said that she is in a hole and that she won't be contributing financially either. Amy and Belle had a pretty good relationship, and Amy relied on their financial support when she was planning the wedding. I decided to not participate in this wedding either, since Amy decided to exclude her father and my best friend. Now Amy says that I'm in a hole for refusing to pay for the wedding, to participate in it, and ruining her special day. Kate says I'm being too harsh on her since she lost the support of her bio dad and stepmom. Her fiancé is on her side too. Selena, Ron, and Belle think that she's an asshole and pretty much cut her off, expecting me to cut her off as well.
What is the most unprofessional thing you've done at work? My wife and I worked at a carpet store, and my wife ended up sleeping with the owner of the company, so I divorced the jerk, but I kept working at the company because the economy sucked and I had new attorney bills to pay. The jerk continued to work there as well. I got really depressed watching the jerk and the owner always going to lunch and weekend trips together. I started smoking a lot of grass to deal with the depression. One day I came into work totally baked. I was on the forklift moving a roll of carpet out of the showroom. The forklift only has 3 controls, but I was so blasted it felt like I was flying a spaceship. I ended up lifting the roll of carpet too high and knocked a fluorescent light tube out of its socket and right onto a customer's head. The owner came over and proceeded to tear me a new one. The customer's face was cut in a few places and he was bleeding pretty good, but he was tough and told the owner everything was fine and accidents happen. After the customer left, the owner continued to chew me out and told me that I was fired as soon as he could find another warehouse manager. So what did I do? I went to the computer and looked up the customer's information. I called the customer I injured and explained my story. I then gave him a proposition. I told him that I was under the influence while driving that forklift and I have never been substance tested, not even once. I told the customer that if he took the owner to court, I would admit to everything. I assured him he would win the case, as I've seen similar stuff happen before in my profession. In return, I wanted 25% of his total winnings. The customer did not even hesitate. He said, "Let's get that dirt bag," and hung up with me and called a lawyer. Thanks to our jacked up justice system, I got to screw my boss who screwed my wife. The customer won a $2 million settlement, and I ended up getting a little over $400,000 and spent less than a day in jail. I left trip early because my boyfriend and his friends embarrassed me to tears. Okay, strap in because this is the most bizarre and embarrassing thing that has ever happened to me. So I went to ski trip with my boyfriend and his friends. It's their annual trip and the first time I went. We have been together for 2 years. The group that goes is him and 5 of his friends, 4 guys and 1 girl, all late 20s. I have met 2 of the guys before, but the other 2 and the girl I've only met briefly over FaceTime. They knew I was coming on the trip, so they Airbnb this house about 10 minutes from ski resort. We are a few days in for this weekly trip and everything is fine. The only problem has been the bathroom doors don't seem to lock. Important for later. There had been some near embarrassing moments, but nothing major until day 4 of 7. I'm not a huge drinker, especially around people I don't know well. I wanted to just nurse a drink while we all talked and they drank. We haven't been eating the best and have pizza before this. My stomach was bothering me, so I excused myself to the bathroom on the main floor. I should have gone in the one upstairs, but you know what they say about hindsight. So I'm on the toilet, obviously taking a poop, when the doorknob starts to move. I'm in here, but his female friend comes in anyway. I don't know if because it was me or she was too drunk to hear or care. She honestly smells what's going on and makes a big ruckus to the rest of the group that I'm pooping. I told her to please get out as calmly as I could because I was starting to get very upset. She was making a big deal over a normal bodily process. So she goes to leave the bathroom but basically throws open the bathroom door to do so. 3 of the 4 guys are there in the hallway and she's exposed me to them. Now I'm very upset and mortified. I yelled at her to get out and to shut the door behind her. They all are standing in the doorway and not listening to me. My boyfriend notices what's going on and comes into the bathroom. I think he's going to yell at his friends, but instead, the drunk jerk comments on how bad it smells in the bathroom. He leaves but doesn't take his friends with him. They continue to point and laugh while I'm in a vulnerable state. I think they were making potty jokes. All while I'm sat on the toilet, pant at my ankles, keeping my knees locked shut. I start screaming at this point to get the heck out of the bathroom and shut the damn door over and over. I am actually crying at this point because I'm so mortified and I've never been in such a bizarre situation. My crying and screaming finally got the drunkard's attention. She shuts the door behind her. Now I'm breaking down in the bathroom, still crying and trying to get sorted so I can be done and wash my hands and get the hell out of this room. While washing my hands, all I can think is that my boyfriend didn't help at all. I know they're drunk, but I don't think that's much of an excuse. They've just been drinking beer and I think he'd had 4 so far. I am absolutely mortified and decide to just go into the bedroom. However, when I come out of the bathroom, still crying a bit by the way, all 6 of them start howling with laughter and pointing at me. It's like one of those crazy nightmares where everything seems more dramatic than real life should be. I just look at my boyfriend, meet his eyes and everything to show how upset I am, and they don't stop. I go upstairs to our room and pack. I can't go through 3 more days with these people and I don't want to sleep in the same bed as drunk boyfriend. Drunk or not, they're being incredibly disrespectful and childish. I don't think I've ever been so embarrassed. I finish packing, change my flight to the next morning, and order an Uber to go to the airport hotel. I gather all of my things and walk downstairs to get my coat and leave. They all start laughing when I come back in the room, but boyfriend finally notices I have my bags with me. I silently put my coat on. Boyfriend yells, "Where the heck are you going?" Airport is all I say. Now he is yelling and they're all yelling, saying it was just in good fun and I should lighten up, have another beer, etc. No one apologizes, not even boyfriend. He just seems so mad that I'm leaving. I tell him I'll see him in a few days and walk out to my Uber. Once I'm finally in my hotel room later, I curl up in bed and cry. I definitely did not see this being the way of my trip ended. Once I flew home the next morning and got back to my apartment, I had so many texts, missed calls and voice messages from boyfriend. They ranged from apologetic to angry to accusing, as if I did something wrong by going to the freaking bathroom. I haven't responded yet and he comes home in 2 days. I haven't even read all of the texts because it got more upset. How the heck am I supposed to face these people again? It just seems like the most bizarre and surreal experience. I think I'm more upset that my boyfriend did nothing, even when I was screaming and crying. He didn't stop me from leaving. He didn't follow me out. He just yelled at me and asked me where the heck I was going. How could he not make sure I'm okay? Even now, I was upset enough to leave, and his texts that I did read are not supportive. No apology. Basically, I put a damper on the trip. I'm dramatic. It wasn't that bad, but I made a terrible impression with his friends. What about their impression to me? Because I'm having some pretty strong thoughts. Right now I still have a boyfriend. That might be changing in a few days. I love him but do not like his reaction to all this. Why heck am I getting blamed? I did not receive this type of deal breaker. I wish I wasn't a tomboy. My girlfriend is very attractive and feminine and I can't help but feel like shit about it. She experiences a privilege that she is almost unaware of. Men are so nice to her and disregard me whenever talking to her, even when they are aware that we are together. I feel so stupid, like a naive child who's playing pretend trying to compete with men. Men like to treat women on a scale of how pretty you are, and if you're not attractive to them then you're not respected. I'm so sick of men treating me like I'm lesser than my girlfriend just because they don't find me attractive. My way of coping is looking at other masculine women whom I find cool and attractive, telling myself that I would never think they look stupid. I want to be respected by other men as an individual who can pose a threat. I'm not transgender because I do not want to modify my body in that way. I know my hands wouldn't be big enough, my jaw wouldn't be defined enough, my hips wouldn't be small enough, and I wouldn't be tall enough. I also recognize that I would still be more respected as a female than if I was a short male. For the past few years I've just been weightlifting and building enough muscle to be okay with still having a female body. Does anyone else feel this way?
Non-Americans of Reddit, what was the biggest culture shock you experienced when you came to the US? I moved from Japan to America and now I'm starting to see why the sewer slide rate is so high. I'm a foreign exchange student and the dorm I live in is the size of a shoebox. The air smelled so bad I was constantly making what Americans call a stank face. The ceilings were constantly leaking because some girl who lived above me would leave the water running to cover up the sounds her and her boyfriend were making at 4 a.m. And the girls living in the dorm next to mine would invite the football team over, so as you can guess I got no sleep. But the biggest shock of all was what happened to my skin, and I realized I took it for granted. For context, I had really clear skin. It was smooth, blemish-free, and I had a healthy glow. I never had acne before in my life, and I thought it was always going to be that way. But after just a month of living in America, my face was disgusting. I nearly vomited when I saw how many pimples plagued my face. They were small and big, and all filled with pus. My skin was also irritated and appeared swollen. I didn't know what to do at that moment, so I asked my roommate for help because I had seen her do a skincare routine nearly every night. But that's when it became clear to me that she also had dirty, acne-filled skin. I didn't even know how that was possible because she put on a lot of expensive brands. When I asked her about it, she said she didn't know either. She did her skincare routine, but it never helped clear her face and just ended up being a waste of money. With my roommate not being able to help me, I went online to find out what could have been the cause of my acne and how I could get rid of it, because I had no idea where to even begin. Turns out, many things could have given me acne, like the new food I was eating, the makeup I bought, even the air quality might have affected me. I couldn't do anything but freak out. because that just meant I was doomed to live with acne forever because of these terrible environmental conditions. I was so frantic I was even considering booking a flight back to Japan, but I couldn't afford the plane ticket, so I looked for solutions instead. I spent the entire day looking, even asking my roommate if the products that appeared were good to use, but she kept telling me it didn't do anything for her. After looking on YouTube for hours, it wasn't until the middle of the night that I found something useful on there. It was a video called "Is Water Ruining Your Skin?" It was two dermatologists talking about how the water hardness of your house could have an effect on your skin, since it would damage it on a daily basis. It didn't matter what cleaners and products you used, or how long your routine was, because if your water had toxic minerals in them like calcium carbonate, your skin would never clear up, and would be at a higher risk of breakouts. That explained why I was only breaking out in America and not in Japan, since the water in Japan was very pure, and didn't have any harsh chemicals in it. I never had to deal with this type of water before, so my skin was always great, but it was normal for my roommate since she lived here her whole life. The dermatologist then went on to show studies that showed that there's a higher chance of a person getting eczema, sensitive skin, dry skin and irritation if there were high levels of calcium carbonate in their water. They suggested that getting a water filter to remove calcium carbonate would be the best solution to dealing with hard water. The one they recommended was a Crefy water filter because it was clinically proven to improve the skin in 2 weeks. They also suggested using a towel specifically for your face, because if you're using the same towel to wash your face and body, you're just contaminating your face with bacteria all over again. Their last tip was to use a pillowcase, preferably a silk one, to protect the skin barrier from getting damaged. While I was buying the Crefy water filter, I also filled out the water report on their website to learn what was in the water that I was using every day to wash my face with. Turns out, it had all kinds of chemicals like arsenic and chemicals I couldn't pronounce like dibromochloromethane. Just from the arsenic I was putting on my face, I was at risk of skin cancer, and with dibromochloromethane, I was at risk of liver, kidney, and brain damage. That gave me more motivation to buy the water filter, towel and pillowcase. Just a week after using the items, my skin had started to clear up. The number of pimples on my face were reducing, and my face had stopped being so red. It didn't look swollen anymore either. I started to feel like myself again because I was regaining my beauty. I would stare at myself in the mirror just to admire the clear parts of my skin because of how much I had missed it. I felt hopeless that other night. I even wanted to hide from everybody because I couldn't stand looking like that, but everything was turning out all right. 2 weeks later, there were hardly any pimples in sight, and my skin was looking healthy again. You never would have guessed that I had the worst acne breakout of my life because none of the pimples left any scarring, and the red bumps from my irritation were gone. Even my roommate was experiencing the same results of my Crefy water filter. She came out of the bathroom one day, screaming with joy that her acne was finally gone. Her skin was smooth for the first time in her life and she looked radiating. She said nothing had ever done this to her skin before, and I got the feeling she wasn't lying. I also noticed she hadn't even used a face towel or pillowcase like me, so that just went on to show that water was the biggest contributor to fixing our nasty skin. Everything else fell into place right after, and a lot of other girls in our hall started using our sink for the Crefy water filter after seeing the change in our faces. Since then, my roommate has been non-stop telling me that her life has changed because everyone is treating her differently. People are finally noticing her and boys are asking for her number. She even got invited to a party next week, even though she had never been invited to one. In fact, she was on a no uglies allowed list that the frat boys and sorority girls.
Today I effed up by eating edibles right before going to a haunted house. I know I sound like a massive idiot, but based on how awful I ended up feeling, the night could have gone a lot worse. I'm a 17-year-old guy and I just recently joined a new friend group at my school. This is the first year I've ever done sports, and it led me to make some new friends pretty easily for the first time in my life. Before this I never really hung out with big groups of people or popular kids, but now I find myself getting invited to parties and football games on a weekly basis. As good as it feels, I'm still struggling a bit as I adjust to having a social life for the first time, and I feel like I'm hyper aware of how awkward I am. That's how I found myself in the humiliating situation that took place this past weekend. It was ridiculous, but the night turned out to be way better than I thought it would be. A couple of my new friends from my track team invited me to a local haunted house on Saturday night. I was excited because I found out a girl that I had a big crush on would be there. Her name is Lily and I met her when I joined the environmental club. She's the club's president, and she's really passionate and organized. I was so attracted to her since she's beautiful and is a great leader to everyone in the club. I had butterflies in my stomach as soon as my friends picked me up and I saw her in the backseat. She greeted me with a stunning smile, and I almost fainted right there. When we parked at the haunted house, one of the guys in the group, Greg, pulled out a tin of edibles. The other people in the group started making jokes about how it was a bad idea, but Greg insisted it would be fun and that we were all PCs. He offered some to everyone, and when it was my turn, I made the snap decision to take one. I thought it would make me look cool in front of Lily, since none of the other guys in the group had the guts to eat one. Anyway, we ended up standing in line for about 40 minutes since it was packed that night. At first, I was having a great time, cracking jokes with my friends and getting to know Lily Netter. It wasn't until we walked into the main haunted attraction that I felt the edible hit me like a truck. My heart started pounding, and my vision started blurring. I had never eaten edibles before that night, and as soon as I started coming up, I felt myself starting to freak out. The sensations in my body felt terrifying, overwhelming, and uncontrollable. Lily was holding my hand as we walked through the haunted house, but I was only feeling worse with each step. I started to get really overstimulated and paranoid. I kept forgetting where we were and thinking I was in actual danger. I finally lost my cool when a scare actor jumped out and grabbed me by the shoulders. The next thing I knew, I was on the ground crying, pulling myself into the fetal position. It was dark, and the only light was coming from a nearby strobe light. I had never felt so disoriented in my life. I was crying my eyes out and begging no one in particular to take me home. After a minute of lying there on the floor, engulfed in terror, I felt someone gently help me up and lead me out of the haunted house. I didn't care who it was, one of my friends or an employee. I just hid my face in their shoulder until we exited the haunted house. When we got outside, I saw that Lily was my savior. She sat me down on a curb outside the house and held my hands as she spoke softly to me and reassured me that I was okay. She bought me a water bottle and ended up sitting there with me, just comforting me until our other friends found us. I had never been treated so kindly by someone when I needed it so badly. Although it was so embarrassing to be seen like that by my crush, I only like her more after seeing what a sweet person she is. She called me the next day to check on me, and I decided I want to get to know her as well as I can, and when the time is right I'll ask her out. What an angel. I just hope one day she can look at me in a romantic way after seeing me looking like a scared baby. What was the most disturbing thing you found your partner doing? I've always been suspicious of my girlfriend's ability to stay calm, even in heated arguments. She never seems to get upset or anything. Well, last night I found out how she deals with her pent-up anger, and it was horrifying. That night, we were talking about the recent submarine events, and we both had different opinions on the matter. Anyway, I thought it was lighthearted because of how she always spoke calmly and even laughed at some points. That was until she got up, and just ended it with, "You know what? Don't talk to me." I tried to tell her it doesn't matter, but she kept cutting me off, going, yeah. Basically telling me to shut up. So, here I am feeling like crap. I wake up in the middle of the night, and she's not in our bed. Whatever, I don't control her, right? Then, I heard the door of the bathroom open, so I figured she just went to the toilet. I feel gross detailing this out, but whatever. I could hear her pee hitting the bowl, but I didn't hear her flush. Instead, she opened the door, and I heard her walk away. I was slightly worried, and I needed to use the bathroom anyway, so I got up to see what was going on. What I saw truly horrified me in ways I'm still not capable of completely explaining. I walked out to see her in the living room, holding one of the food containers that had some leftovers. Next to her was a glass, filled with a yellow liquid. I could instantly distinguish it by its looks and stench. What she did next nearly made me throw up then and there. She poured the glass into the food. I immediately screamed at her, demanding to know what the hell she thought she was doing. She had a deer-caught-in-headlight look on her face, and flinched, causing them to go everywhere. I kept screaming at her, and she started crying, saying she's sorry over and over. I told her I demand an explanation, or she was free to call her mom and leave. Apparently, the reason she's always so calm and happy the morning after arguments where she gets mad, is because she does this. She drinks a whole lot of water, and in the night when I sleep, she goes and pours it in food. Apparently this started with simply pouring it on my belongings. I was disgusted. I screamed at her some more and I don't even feel guilty that she cried. I told her to get out of my house, or I'm calling the police. She tried to beg but eventually left. I sent her a message to get someone to get her stuff, that were over and blocked her. I don't even know what to say. I feel violated, and disgusted. The fact she knew what she was doing, watched me eat it, and never felt guilty. Even the thought of it makes me want to throw up. My fiancée came out as a lesbian right before our marriage, and no one gives a damn about me. They're all just so happy for her. My ex, Dana, and I have been together for 7 years and I knew that she was bisexual from the beginning, and she openly told me about her past relationships with girls, but I never cared because it wasn't a problem at all. We never had any big fights or arguments, just small things, and we always sorted out everything. So after 7 years of relationship, I decided that it was the right moment to make the big question because we were deeply in love, financially stable and already living together, so for me it was the right time. I prepared everything to make it more romantic and as unique as I possibly could, and when I asked her the final question she hesitated, but then said yes. That was when the problem started, because I didn't understand why the hesitation, and I asked her but she only replied, "I was nervous, so I gave it up." We told this to her parents. Mine passed when I was 20 and my little sister when she was 17 in a car accident, and our friends, but some things were off even there because her parents were faking being happy, and I didn't understand why while our friends were super happy and were already giving us ideas for our wedding. 4 months passed by and we were planning our wedding when, the day, came up. I came back home from work and she was waiting for me with her bags ready and I asked her what was going on. She told me, "Listen, I know that this is going to be hard for you but I'm not bi, I'm lesbian. My parents knew this for 2 years now and this is why they weren't happy and were faking it. Please, I beg you to not make it difficult and just let me leave. Don't cry, don't beg and don't scream. Let's just things go like adults," and then she drove away. I was standing there on my feet for like 1 hour in shock because I couldn't believe it. We went from getting married, to Dana coming out like a heartless and cold person that I couldn't even recognize. The worst part is now, because 3 months passed since that day, I canceled the wedding, and literally no one ever texted me or called me asking me how I was, if I was fine, if I needed something, just nothing. Not her parents, not her, she blocked me that day, and not even our friends. No one gives a damn about me at all. In this 3 months I was hospitalized 3 times cause I lost weight, 15 kilograms, and have insomnia. I just work and come home, nothing else. While everyone is praising her for her coming out, how happy they are that she finally realized she was lesbian and her courage to be herself after years of fighting to find her true identity. Right now I'm not even capable of being mad, I'm just in disbelief for what happened, how fast it all happened, and no one gives a crap about me because her coming out is more important than her ex. You know what? Screw them all, they showed me their true colors.
My creepy stepsister inappropriately flirted with my perfect girlfriend during dinner with my parents, and they didn't care because they let her act however she wants. My parents have been divorced ever since I was 14, and 4 years later, she married my stepdad. Along with my stepdad came his evil daughter, who lacked a mother figure and became the worst version of herself. She's loud, rough, aggressive, takes up a lot of space with her presence, and thinks perfume is an acceptable substitute for a shower or deodorant. She has no manners whatsoever, and my parents don't know how to manage her. My stepsister takes advantage of this and walks all over them. She's disrespectful and smokes inside the house, blares music, and has flown into random rages a couple times while gaming. My stepdad and mom are both very gentle, quiet people, so they always try to keep the peace and don't ground her or anything. Luckily, she doesn't live with us, and I will forever be glad about that because she's such a pain. She's easily the most insufferable person ever. My stepdad has said he feels guilty because he doesn't know where he went wrong in raising her. He thought just showing unconditional love and acceptance would be enough to inspire her to act like a normal woman. Boy, was he wrong. For the last couple of months, I've been dating my girlfriend, and she came over a few nights ago for dinner to meet my family. We had not planned on my stepsister being there, but she came by unannounced for dinner once my girlfriend was already here. I was forced to introduce them, and I wanted to tell my girlfriend to just leave before my stepsister did something horrible to her. But I was quiet, and the entire dinner was just awkward. My stepsister had made several dirty jokes, including ones to my girlfriend about wanting to eat her out, followed by winking at her. Mind you, my stepsister is 27 and my girlfriend is 19. My girlfriend looked so uncomfortable, so I yelled that she was disgusting and she needed to apologize, but she just laughed and told me to take a joke. I looked to my parents for backup, but they could barely look me in the eye. My girlfriend whispers that it was okay, but it really wasn't, and it only got worse as the dinner went on. She snuck glances at my girlfriend's butt whenever she got up. She openly talked about lesbianism and tried to figure out if my girlfriend had ever experimented. She also has a general need for control and will dominate conversation, so normal casual dinner chat was difficult. My parents basically pretended they didn't hear a lot of the gross stuff, or they changed the topic, as they usually did. Later into the night, we were supposed to play a game or watch a movie with my parents, but my girlfriend insisted she had a lot of homework, so she couldn't stay. I knew she was leaving because of my stepsister, we all knew it. When she was leaving, my stepsister tried to hug her, saying, "Come here, honeybuns," and she literally hid behind me. I was so embarrassed and pissed off. I told her to stop that, but she played innocent and said she was only trying to hug my girlfriend. I told her she was uncomfortable with her, and she asked my girlfriend if that was true. She didn't respond, and I just took that opportunity to walk her out. I apologized, but she left really quickly. We haven't talked much since then, and her text messages are really dry. She doesn't text me unless I text first. I feel so bad that she had to endure that harassment, but I'm even more pissed that my parents didn't do anything about it. I never want to bring her around my family again now. I apologized for my stepsister, and I promised that she didn't have to see my family again if she was uncomfortable with them. She hadn't brought it up because she didn't want me to be offended or think she hated my family, but I honestly wouldn't blame her if she did. This was an issue that needed to be talked out anyway, and she said she felt extremely self-conscious and grossed out. She also showed me that my stepsister found and followed her on Instagram the day after the dinner, and sent her a message saying, "Hey there, cutie." My girlfriend of course blocked her. Since my parents weren't going to do anything, I had the idea of writing an email to my stepsister laying out the things I'm not okay with. It said that she and our parents can have whatever relationship works for them, but I'm not going to tolerate certain things she does anymore. I mostly kept it focused on the predatory things and how uncomfortable my girlfriend felt. I said both of us knew exactly what she was doing, even if we were pretending to ignore it. I directly told her it was predatory, and my girlfriend left early just to get away from her. I said she should be ashamed to have sexually harassed someone. I also let her know my girlfriend wants nothing to do with her, and if she shows up while my girlfriend is visiting, we will leave. I added that I personally am sick of her gross sexual commentary about girls in general. I told her from now on, whenever she starts doing that while visiting us, I'll be leaving the room. She just told me I could suck it, followed by a bunch of middle finger emojis. Real mature.
Entitled mom is upset that I did my job, and now my boss is threatening me. I'm a manager of a before and after school child care program in my local public school district. The company that I work for is privately owned, and sort of rents out the space in the schools. I've just passed my 7th year working here, started when I was 15, and I've always really liked it, mainly because the school that I've been working at is the school that I went to as a kid, and it's within close walking distance. Working at that specific school is one of the main reasons that I've worked here for so long. When I became the manager, it was literally something that was just forced upon me, because there was no one else to fill that role. I've always been really good at saving, so I've never asked for a raise before. I've spent my own money buying toys and supplies for the site that the higher-ups either didn't want to get or didn't know what to get. I've been shortened on support staff for my site for the 2nd straight year, as they do not want to pay a competing starting wage with other nearby businesses. But, whatever, working with children, K5, takes a lot out of you, but you do it for them. I've always really liked my job, but the past couple of days are making me change my mind. So there I was, opening, understaffed, with 2 staff out on vacation, 1 not showing, and 2 others coming nearly 30 minutes after school gets out because they're both high schoolers, and have to commute, drop off siblings, and whatever. Shortly after school gets out I usually take the kids to the playground. It's one of the largest playgrounds in the district, despite being one of the smallest schools. So I'm practically solo monitoring 45 kids, because 1 staff has to stand at the entrance to the playground, and then a hill and the equipment get in the way. Then I heard a lot of yelling that one of the first grade girls is crying. When I get over there the first grader is under some stairs crying, and I start my questioning. The first grader in question has some mobility disability, required a walker to get around and had multiple surgeries over the summer to help. Turns out that a new kid in the program this year, a 3rd grade boy, had pushed her down, kept pushing her down, pinned her to the ground and grabbed her neck. When I asked the 3rd grader why he did this he said I don't know. When I asked if there was a reason why he did this he said no. In response I had him apologize to the first grader, and walk 3 laps around the blacktop, and of course I wrote up a behavior report for him to give to his parents. All pretty normal, until I get a text from my boss if I could come into the company office to talk. Apparently, the mom of the 3rd grader had called my boss and the principal of the school and had a multi-hour conversation about how I was being biased and unfair to her kid. She demanded that I be removed from the site, and my boss, for some reason, immediately caved and said that I can pick the school that I wanted to change. So, I'm essentially being demoted, told I have to spend a lot more on commuting, be moved with no advanced warning, and cause the site that I have spent so much effort on to have no manager, for the horrible crime of doing my job. Daughter-in-law's perspective: my daughter-in-law gave birth and doesn't seem to want a relationship with me. Hello, be here. Yes, I am withholding visitation rights from my mother-in-law. At first this may seem, but you need to realize this woman is psychotic. She went above and beyond to get visitation rights however. The very first thing she did is show up at our door, with a knife. At first I thought we were in danger, but that is when she started screaming at us, threatening to take her own life if we don't allow her to see her grandafter. Classic manipulation. According to her we have turned the whole family against her. Once we got her calmed down and out of the house we contacted a mental health facility and she was placed in there. However she was released in 72 hours. Her first step out of the facility was to contact CPS about child mistreatment. CPS showed up at our door and did a thorough search and found that all was good, the children were not in any sort of danger. This woman is psychotic. If you think it ends here, you are severely mistaken. This woman, I kid you not, picklocked her way into our house when we were gone. And called the police saying we have kidnapped her. Before the police showed up she used tape and rope to tie herself to a chair. We came home to find many cops at outhouse and when we saw what was inside my husband and I just started laughing. We were interrogated heavily by the police of course but we convinced them to check the cameras. The look on the mother-in-law's face dropped. She is now facing charges for breaking and entering. We have filed a restraining order that seems like it is going well and should be granted. Needless to say, she will legally not be allowed visitation rights. My husband and I are going to try to move states though, just for extra safety measures. This woman is a psychopath.
My ex-husband found out that his mother plans to leave her will to me. He has since come back begging for forgiveness. My ex-husband cheated on me with his co-worker Bethany. I was 2 months pregnant with our second child when I found out. Bethany was going to have his child. I miscarried. My ex left the house to be with her. It's been 2 years since the child was born. My mother-in-law has been supportive of me and has had nothing to do with my ex or his mistress and their child. Up until a few months ago. I adore my in-laws and we're extremely close. My mother-in-law and parents are the best of friends. She loves me and her grandson more than anything. This infuriates my ex-husband's affair partner. My in-laws cut contact with them straight away. Bethany was jealous that her child would never know the love of grandparents. At least her son has a father. Unfortunately, my mother-in-law has been very ill for a while and so she's updated her will. My ex-husband was an only child, so he would get everything. But now, my son will inherit her house, villa and money. I will receive a large portion of her money and all of her belongings. Until my son turns 18, it will be in my trust. If I pass before that, my parents will take care of it. They do not know this. The thing is, once they caught wind of her being ill, my ex-husband begged for forgiveness. The mistress started being nice towards her and forced her to be around his baby. My mother-in-law is bedbound, but she says she wants to leave with a bang so she'll endure this. I haven't encouraged her to do anything and this is her choice alone. They want her money, and her son thinks he is still included in the will. He also thinks his child will now be acknowledged by his grandmother and will also receive money. Now, my mother-in-law hasn't actually said she's forgiven them. She despises her son and his mistress for tearing apart our family. She wants to reward those who deserve it, and get revenge in one go. The mistress keeps on hinting on how her child will grow up and attend a great college etc. whenever she's around my mother-in-law. Actually, mother-in-law's niece has overheard her on the phone discussing what wallpaper she wants in the dining room when she moves in and how my mother-in-law has no taste whatsoever. She also mentioned how she'll finally be able to take down pictures of my son when my ex owns the house. Too bad for her, it will belong to my son. No changes will be made until my son becomes 18. It's his grandmother's home and he should be allowed to cherish it in the way she's decorated it. I'm not really allowed to tell anyone, and though this revenge will be satisfying, I'll have to lose my mother-in-law. It's kind of a win-lose situation and I dread the day when she'll take her last breath. She means a lot to me, I love her. My boyfriend accused me of being a gold digger. He has no gold. I live with my boyfriend. We are poor. We live in a box flat with a tiny bathroom so small I can take a poop, wash my hands, and shower simultaneously. I work 2 jobs to keep us afloat. I'm a bartender at a club at night and a hairdresser by day. He's an Uber delivery driver who works flexible hours but only works 3 hours and spends the rest of his time investing in crypto. I do not mind being the breadwinner, but that is what I am. I am the breadwinner, hands down. Anytime I ask him to pick up more shifts, he says he will and never does. And it's coursed arguments. Our landlord has increased our rent, and I've asked for his financial help for our flat, but he says he's put his money into investments the government can't touch. He means his crypto scheme. I eventually put my foot down and told him we don't have investment money. We need housing, gas, electricity, water, and food. He told me that I talked about taking his assets and that I'm a gold digger. I was so taken aback I had to ask our roommates, Master Splinter and the teenage ninja roaches, if I heard that right. I told him I worked in a club and asked if I wanted to be a gold digger. I wouldn't be standing in a shoebox with him huddling around a Yankee Candle for warmth. I wouldn't be spending my evenings trying to figure out how to make dinner with a pack of Kool-Aid, a tumbleweed, and a singular kidney bean I found in our cupboards. I told him the other men I see in the club make it rain daily, while he can't even scrape together enough sense to make it hail. He asked me if I could go somewhere else because he needed space. But we live in a 1-room apartment. Where am I supposed to go? In the kitchen sink? The more I think about it, the more angry it makes me. Even the local meth addict that sleeps on my apartment complex patio agrees he's delusional. It's a dark day when you have a more reasonable conversation with a meth addict than with your partner.
Men, what is something a woman would never understand? That when 2 men hang out it's completely normal to not talk about important stuff or at all. Pinch and roll to cure sack itch. The long step on a humid day. How long compliments stick with us, we remember forever because we rarely get them. No matter how many times you shake it you never get it all. Our silence has nothing to do with you, most of the time we're just trying to figure stuff out. Cleaning debris from the toilet bowl with your piss stream. People being afraid of me because I'm a big guy. I can give off an intimidating aura, so if I'm walking behind a woman, she is often looking over her shoulder every now and then. I try to make a show of tying my shoe or slowing down so she gets some more distance. Sometimes I'll cross the road. I know why they are afraid of me and I don't blame them in the slightest. It just hurts sometimes is all. 5 urinals in a line are only 3 urinals. How incredibly lonely men can be. How starved men are for any sort of physical touch or genuine compliment. The absolute real ability to actually not be thinking about anything at all. My niece crushed my daughter's hand. Should I press charges? My folks went on a trip for Christmas, so before that, they threw an early holiday bash at our house. Our whole family, including me, my husband, and our 16-year-old daughter Laura, showed up. My sister and her kid Rachel joined too. Rachel is a year older than Laura, but they clash a lot. We usually avoid them because Rachel has caused Laura a bunch of trouble. Rachel's super smart and always a star in class. She's also really good looking. I've always been happy for her, but people often let her off easy because of these things. My sister even accused Laura of lying out of jealousy for Rachel's looks and talents. Laura got into boxing last year and has made awesome progress. She's moving up a level next year, and her coach is super proud. But my sister keeps saying boxing's just a phase and pushes Rachel's school stuff instead. At my parents' house, Laura went to arrange some gifts under the tree, and Rachel tagged along. Rachel was wearing those pointy high heels and stepped on Laura's hand on purpose. Laura was in really bad pain. We rushed to the hospital, and the doctor said Laura needs lots of physical therapy after a checkup today. She won't be able to box for who knows how long. She's super upset about this. I was really mad at my sister. She's acting like it was an accident, but after all these years of calling Laura mean names, do you really think I believe this was just a mistake? Rachel acted all sad, but only her parents bought it. My husband and I want to talk to the police, and I agree. I warned my sister, and she started crying, saying Rachel's teachers want her to apply to top colleges, and a criminal record would ruin that. I don't feel sorry for her. Rachel took something Laura loves and caused her tons of pain. She should face consequences, like getting in trouble with the law. Laura's heartbroken, and Rachel's parents won't punish her. My kids were pissing me off, so I drove intoxicated to teach them a lesson. I have 3 children, twin boys that are 5 and a little girl that's 3. My wife and I love them unconditionally, and I've done everything I can to raise them well and impart upon them basic values of respect and kindness. Recently, however, I've been feeling like a failure, because my kids behave like such souls. To be quite honest, they are spoiled brats who whine and cry until they get what they want, and their mother only enables this behavior by giving in to their every demand. Because of this, I decided that I would keep a firmer hand and make them realize that they can't always get what they want. I tried this for the first time a few nights ago when they started begging me to go out and get ice cream. I had gotten home from work a few hours earlier and had a beer or 2, so I told them about how driving intoxicated was illegal and dangerous, and so we couldn't go out. This didn't make them stop, however, and for the next half hour, they were climbing all over the living room and all over me, screaming and crying about ice cream. I was calm for the first 10 minutes, but after that, every scream set me off a little bit more. Finally, I I decided to teach them a lesson they'd never forget. Sighing, I agreed that I would take them out for ice cream, but that they would have to buckle up because I had been drinking. The moment we got out on the road, I started swerving left to right, braking suddenly and accelerating, basically doing everything I could to make the ride as rough as possible. I told them I was sorry, but that was the price of driving intoxicated. They were already crying when I began phase 2 of my plan. I started playing a police siren really loud on my phone and pretended to get really scared. I said that was the intoxicated alarm in my car, and that we had to get home quick because if the cops found me driving intoxicated, they would shoot everyone inside the car. At this point they were bawling and begging to go home, and I was more than happy to oblige. The moment we got into the driveway, they ran out of the car screaming to their mom about what I had done. She gave me an earful for endangering their lives like that, but I still think it was an important lesson for them to learn. As a parent/guardian, how does it feel when few to no people show up to your child's birthday party? It happened to my youngest sibling, the baby of the family, a short and sweet-faced boy who had, at the time, just turned 12 and whose voice was still high-pitched with a little hint of a lisp. He's never had a mean bone in his body, and is generally known at school for being a very friendly and generous kid who's well liked by pretty much everyone. He had been planning his 12th birthday party for weeks, and had sent out invitations to I think 10 to 15 kids and been told that they would all be there. I took him to Costco and Party City the day before and watched him excitedly and meticulously pick out the perfect snacks, the perfect drinks, the perfect decorations. The next day, he spent the whole day cleaning and decorating and cooking. At his insistence, it was his party, so he wanted to be the one who got everything ready. And then the time of the party came. And then half an hour passed. And then an hour, and then 2 hours. And the most heartbreaking thing to me was that this sweet little boy didn't get angry, didn't get sad, didn't do what I would have done and get angry at his friends for ditching. Nope, he just sat there on the couch, facing the door, assuring all of us that his friends were just running really late, maybe they had an event they all had to go to, maybe the traffic was really bad. He refused to acknowledge the possibility that his friends just hadn't come. Eventually, about 4 or 5 friends did show up, and they actually had reasons for being late. A few of them, siblings, had a family obligation and the other had, to my recollection, been out of town and had literally just returned. They had told my brother in advance that they'd be late but would try to come as soon as their other obligations were done. The friends who did show up were his best friends at the time and are the only ones he continues to be friends with now, 2 years later. We reheated the food, readjusted the decorations, and he was perfectly content with partying and playing games with just the friends who showed up. But I'll never forget how completely heartbreaking it was to see my baby brother insisting that his friends from school were going to show up any moment and would never skip his party, even 2 hours after they were supposed to arrive. Update: I broke my son and his girlfriend up and he doesn't know it was me. I just wanted to clear a few things up first. I give my son space and freedom, but I wanted him to be able to take time from me entirely if he wished. Throughout his teen years, whenever he was upset, he would ask me to leave him alone. I would oblige, but honestly if he didn't speak to me for more than 3 days I would just ask if he was okay. After his biofather died, I told him he could have a break from talking if he wanted, and I would wait for the okay to contact him. The break only lasted for maybe a week and he wanted to call me and visit. For the actual update, Kaylee decided to give him a call. She talked things out with her sister and decided to ask him. Apparently, he was cheating, but told her that it was because she was on her period and very sensitive to everything. He said he had done it 3 other times, all while she is on her period. She called me and told me before my son told me, but in his defense, he was busy explaining things to his girlfriend and now Mike who he accidentally wrapped into this. It's only 12 in the afternoon, and he wants to tell me in detail after work, which I told him was okay. He told me he was sorry for lying, and I told him it was okay but it hurt my feelings. I didn't mention this in the post or to him but his bio dad cheated on me and that is why we are apart. He cheated on me before I was pregnant with my son, and for the first year of our marriage, I did not want my son to think that was okay. I talked to Kaylee and she is just head over heels for my son, and said if he promises not to do it again she would stay with him. I haven't told him that because that is not my business, they can talk about that. My son has sent me a few messages about work, but he seems extremely sorry. I am a bit disappointed in him but I think it's because of what I went through and how hard being a single mother after the man you thought loved you just left. Kaylee said that she would try to be a more attentive girlfriend, which honestly sucks to hear because this is not her fault. I am not going to dictate their relationship and tell her to find someone else, but it does shock me that she can forgive. As much as I want to be mad at my son, I really can't. I've never gotten mad at him before and I think this situation just brought me back to everything that happened when he was little. I hope my son can learn from this. Tonight when we talk I'm going to be a little strict on him, obviously, but again he is an adult. If he says he is going to cheat on her, I cannot stop him. I really hope he learns.
Husband and his friends have a nickname for me in their group chat. He won't tell me what it means. This happened a couple days ago. My phone died right as I was texting my mom about something rather important, so my husband let me use his. As I was typing, a banner popped up with a text from one of his friends to their group chat, saying to the effect of, "Hey husband, do you and ST still want to Halloween plan we talked about?" So of course I'm like, whose street? Those are not my initials. I briefly looked at the chat. A few messages up I was at least able to confirm ST was me, in context of my husband mentioning a specific thing I'd done that day. Like I said, ST is not an abbreviation of my name or any name I would go by. None of our friends calls me by anything other than my real name, so I was confused. I showed him the chat and asked what it stood for. He looked suddenly really flustered. He grabbed his phone back and said, "Oh, it's nothing, just a nickname." "Okay, well, what's it stand for?" He literally wouldn't tell me. He just kept saying, "Don't worry about it." Well, is there some reason I would need to worry? I wouldn't be worrying if he just explained what it meant. I was a little put off by this, to find out all his friends are calling me something I don't even know about. I told him even if it's just some dumb joke, at least tell me, because clamming up just makes it look kind of weird. He still refused to tell me. This entire back and forth was maybe a minute or two, then, he suddenly goes, "Okay, fine, it's super terrific." Look, I can't tell if I'm being crazy, but I just don't fully buy that. If that's all it was, why not say so the first time I asked? I asked like 3 or 4 times for him to tell me what it stood for. Why keep avoiding it? On the other hand, I know this makes me look like a really high-strung paranoid person to be suspicious when it could so easily be what he said. I don't want to accuse him of lying with no proof, and over something so dumb. This is still bugging me a little. I just want to know if I'm being insane to have an inkling of doubt about it standing for super terrific. Do you think he was telling the truth? Would it be ridiculous to bring it up again at this point?
I told my sick mom that I will always prioritize my in-laws. I am solely posting this to know if I'm an a-hole for doing this or if it's justified. My mom has 8 kids, I'm the 4th. She was a crap mom. She always seemed to hate me in particular. I think it's because I look exactly like my dad, not in the picture. Another thing that happened was when I was 16, our house burned down. We had to move into a family friend's basement. My mom basically told me to get out and go find a place, because it's too crowded here, even though she never said that to my 2 older sisters who still lived with her. One was above 18. The next year my mom got another house and I moved back in. When I turned 18 she told me I had to pay rent. My older siblings were supposed to as well, but she never enforced it with them. My second oldest sister is in her 30s now and still lives at home. She just sits on her phone all day. I never realized how effed up this was until I met my, now, wife and her parents. And while I know my mom tried her best as a single mom, she never tried her best with me. That's my therapist talking, lol. Now my mom is trying to repair her relationship with me. She has skin cancer. She got it taken out but the margins were positive or something. She's not dying tomorrow but does need more surgery. She invites me for holidays and calls every few months to rant about my other siblings. She called me last week and asked me to come over this weekend. I said I need to ask my wife what days we're going to her parents' house. She said, "Why can't you set a date with me and then go to wife's parents' house on the opposite day?" I told her that I will always prioritize my wife's parents and they and my wife always get to pick the day. She acted all sad. I said sorry, I didn't mean it like that, but we both know I did. Now my younger sister, who is her favorite, is asking me how dare you. She told me mom called her crying. I said mom's an adult who can manage her own feelings and I'm not responsible for them. She even tried to call and tattle to my wife. Little does she know if it were up to my wife we wouldn't talk to any of them. My sister said that upsetting an older sick person can make them take a turn for the worse, and if anything happens to mom it's on me and I need to call and tell her I love her. My wife says don't worry about it. People who have found a body, what's your story? Came home from work one afternoon and was watching TV. I realized I haven't seen my best friend who was also my roommate in almost 2 days. He was diabetic and also an addict. He wasn't great at managing his diabetes and twice in the past I've had to take him to the hospital because of it. I was pretty worried about him so I went upstairs to check on him. His bedroom door was slightly ajar. I called out his name and tapped on the door. I could see his legs hanging over the side of his bed and I poked the door open. He wasn't moving at all. I called out his name again and that's when I saw the shotgun laying across his chest. Then I saw his face and what used to be the top of his head. He had put the firearm in his mouth sometime during the day and pulled the trigger. I was in absolute shock. There were needles and empty bags everywhere and a plate with every substance you can think of on the bed next to him. It looked like he had done nothing but substances for weeks and hadn't cleaned. We hadn't been getting along and were not talking much, so I was oblivious to the state of his floor of our townhouse. In a panic I started to clean the room trying to hide the evidence. But there was just too much and being in the room with him and the aftermath was just too much. I went in and out of the room a few times and got as much as I could. But the shock set in and I gave up and went next door to call the police. Afterwards I was charged with 2 felonies just because I lived there. The experience gave me severe PTSD. It was 10 years ago last month and I'm still in therapy. That image and the guilt that I didn't do more to help him will haunt me for the rest of my life. Update: am I the jerk for canceling my stepson's birthday because he facepalmed me? A lot of you have DM'd me for an update and since things are getting better between me and my son I decided to let you know how things are going. Click here to see the original post if you haven't already. Since many of you have called me a jerk and after the conversation I had with my husband and his parents, I realized that I did indeed overreact and I shouldn't have made such a harsh punishment. Some of you suggested if his attitude persists, I should find other ways to punish him like not allowing him on the laptop, let him do some housework, etc. and I will start doing these sort of punishments if needed. Unfortunately, due to me not contacting his friends on time, his birthday party still didn't happen on his birthday. It was postponed 2 days later, but my daughter still got to celebrate her birthday on that day. My son was obviously really upset and in the morning he came to me and was on the verge of crying asking me if I did actually cancel his birthday party. I told him that unfortunately his friends already made plans but if he behaves I will still do his birthday after 2 days. Surprisingly, he was really polite with me these days, probably because he really wanted his birthday party, but I am really happy to see that he stopped raising his voice at me and stopped with these rude gestures such as face palming. His grandparents were also really upset on me and they ended up arranging the party for him instead as they said I am too irresponsible. Both birthday parties ended up being successful and until now I still haven't had any severe arguments with him and I am really happy with the way things are going. Thank you to everyone who sent me DMs to support me and provide me tips, especially the stepmothers who are going through similar problems. What is your biggest rated R mess up in the bedroom? Last night my girlfriend decided to talk dirty during intimacy. It was a breakthrough for us in the bedroom. My girlfriend has been insecure about talking in the bedroom since the beginning of our relationship because she's not fluent in English. She usually avoids saying anything mid-deed other than mumbling, which I appreciate too, but I've always wanted to hear her say something hot in the heat of the moment, even if she said something nasty in her native language. I never put pressure on her to do anything that made her uncomfortable, but I did tell her how much I would enjoy hearing things come out of her mouth when we sleep together. She didn't budge though. The thought of talking made her cringe. I eventually accepted the fact that she was obviously not the talking dirty type, which was okay. However, last night happened. My girlfriend came home from an office party and I could tell she was tipsy. She hugged me and said she was prepared to talk dirty if I promised not to laugh. I instantly promised not to laugh. Cue foreplay. I was going down on her when she said she wanted me to reach home base. Sweet. Good opening line for an inexperienced talker. I was impressed. Mid-deed, she kissed me and said you're within me now. I asked if she liked it. She nodded and said you're so far within me now. I was struggling not to break my promise and burst out laughing when I realized she was recycling the same line. When I went to go down again, I said I love the taste. She said cool, thank you. Now work on me like I was a horse in the field and treat me like a saddle. I was afraid she was gonna catch me trying not to laugh. My girlfriend said I can feel you behind my belly button. At that moment, I lost it and laughed. My girlfriend had no idea what was so funny about what she said. I apologized for laughing and said it was the most unique talk I've ever heard and that I loved her even more for giving me that experience. Nothing I said made her less upset about me laughing though. Based on her body language, I'm gonna have to do a lot of exceptionally good boyfriend things before I see her unclothed again.
What's the dumbest thing you've done in your 20s? I took powerlifting way too seriously. I spent 7 years in gyms, 4 hours every day, skipping every social occasion and holiday. I didn't get as strong as I wanted to. I just got all sorts of physical issues to deal with for the rest of my life now. Moved in with a girlfriend before finding out more about her preferences. We had been dating for a year but I didn't realize how much of a problem she had sharing until we lived together. We did for 5 years and never shared a bedroom, had everything split down the middle including the pantry and fridge. Even when it came to spices she insisted on me getting my own. She hated it when I would be in the same room as her unless it was under her terms. Whenever I asked to make our relationship more of a shared experience I was gaslit into believing I was wrong for not allowing boundaries. She moved out a month ago and I couldn't believe how quickly my mental health improved simply by not having that toxic influence around anymore.
The school system failed me by giving me the wrong diagnosis. For as long as I can remember, when I was 8 years old I've had horrible issues with sleep in general. I was always tired during the day and evening no matter what was done. I could sleep 6 hours or 12, absolutely no difference. At the time, none of my doctors could figure out what was wrong with me. They had assumed because I wasn't fat, and I was so young that it simply was ADHD. So I was given Adderall to mask the symptoms of sleep, which did help. I don't know if you guys know what massive sleep deprivation does, but imagine having no sex drive and being tired all the time. Anytime you try to study, you get unbearable sleep attacks that even if you did fight it, it was moot because you literally forgot what you just read. My sleep deprivation was so bad, I had to constantly rock my head against the desk just to stay awake. My teachers were always frustrated with this, and would frequently think I was sleeping and ask me questions. Amazingly enough, I was able to answer these questions and not get in trouble. Eventually, my parents got scared that I wasn't getting proper education and took me into homeschooling. This was literally the worst decision in my life to agree to. They were unbearably strict. I had to get 80% or I was grounded and had to take the lessons over again. It was impossible for me. I tried so hard, but no matter how much I tried it didn't matter. I would be literally fighting myself to stay awake, and forget the last 30 seconds of my life. I didn't know what was wrong with me. I did the only thing I could, and that was cheat. This is my biggest regret in my entire life. I had cheated through 9th grade to 12th, hardcore. I installed a virtual machine, which for some reason Windows 7 gave admin rights inside of it even if you were a standard user. I had copied the answers from the teacher edition. Eventually, the guilt overwhelmed me and I admitted this to my parents. They were not happy at all and made it much harder for me. I then had to use a keylogger to steal the password and grade the courses myself. I felt so guilty. I had graduated high school by cheating and as far as everyone is concerned, I have no better education than a 7th grader. I know absolutely no math at all. I even struggle with addition and subtraction. I became very depressed, and was given antidepressants which didn't work at all. I did make a recovery from depression however, but it was during dark times. I didn't realize I was gay until right around this time, and it kind of hit me all at once. But it was a huge weight lifted when I got out of the closet, as if I was suppressing my own feelings without realizing it. So at this point, I did the only thing I could do. I started studying in computers, as much as I could. I got the shittiest help desk job and moved up the ladder and make decent money, but currently feel I have hit the glass ceiling. I opened up to my friends here and many of them felt that my medication for ADHD was cheating and that being tired is perfectly normal. This hurt me the most because these coworkers were the closest thing to me other than my parents and they totally disregarded my problems as something normal and I was taking the easy way out. I felt no doctor could figure out what was wrong with me, so I literally diagnosed myself. I did research online, and with the symptoms I had and blood test results I knew I had the conditions. I tested positive for narcolepsy, which involves taking 5 naps with 2-hour breaks in between. I fell asleep on 4 out 5 of them, hitting REM within 6 minutes. I was rated at 48 to 72 hours of constant sleep deprivation. My entire life, I was misdiagnosed as having ADHD. To make this even worse, I also had sleep apnea despite not being overweight. I inherited the sleep apnea from my mother and narcolepsy from my father. It was an overwhelming experience. Everything made sense. I no longer feel stupid and understand why I had so many problems. But in return, I feel my entire life has been wasted and I am not sure what to do. I had cheated through high school, skipped college, and only went into IT knowing that it didn't require an education. I had played life the best I can with the cards dealt. But now, knowing this can be treated and I can go to college, I am scared. Part of me regrets not being more resilient to my parents by complaining I needed help, but they never believed I had issues as I had good hyperfocus. I was writing scripts in games at age 9, so they felt I was more than smart enough to handle it. Perhaps my calling is to become a doctor myself, but having no education and starting from high school, just not sure if it's possible. I know I can't blame my parents, they couldn't have known. There's nothing I can do to change the past, but hopefully my story can help support others who have similar issues with staying awake and feel trapped. TIFU isn't for getting advice, it's for letting people know you effed up. And I did. Tomorrow is a new life for me.
Men of Reddit, what are some romantic gestures that girls do that completely melt your heart? Close and emotionally charged hugs, when she buries herself in my chest or neck, makes me feel all strong and protective and absolutely melts me. I'm legally blind in my right eye, and one girl I was dating always made a point to get seats on the right side of theaters so that I'd be able to see everything without turning my head. Really simple, but it blew me away when I caught on to her. When she quietly sits down next to me and snuggles in. Effort. Your significant other may not know exactly what you want or need, but as long as they try, that feels nice. On Valentine's Day, or maybe it was our anniversary, she gave me a deck of cards labeled 52 Things I Love About You, and each card had some unique little quirk of mine. Half of them were things I didn't even realize I did. Absolutely melted my heart. We're not dating anymore, but I still hang on to that deck of cards, even though now it just makes me profoundly sad.
Am I the a-hole for deporting my cheating wife? I met this girl while I was working in a national park, and she was a housekeeper on a work visa. We instantly hit it off, and within a month, we were in a relationship. We even had a solid long-distance arrangement, where we would visit each other on recreational visas in our respective off-seasons. I'd spend a few months in Romania or meet her at some vacation destination, then she'd spend a few months in the States. This went on for about 2 years, and eventually, the conversation came up with her family about possibly moving her to the States permanently. Her marrying and moving to the US meant that her mom wouldn't have to worry about her daughter having a good life. I arranged for sponsorship, and proposed to her. It seemed like my dreams were coming true. Then, about a month after she's all settled in, I get a message from her best friend back home. What followed was a year's worth of screenshots wherein she bragged about conning me into paying for her residency, while she cheated on me with 8 different men. In her friend's words, "You are a good man, and you don't deserve this." So, over the following 2 weeks, I reported her to ICE and Homeland Security for a conversation her brother and I had over a bottle at one point. He bragged about how he had done time in prison for smuggling weapons to Turkish terrorists, and how she had been his lookout on several occasions. As you might imagine, in the War on Terror days, this was not taken lightly. She was immediately arrested and deported, and put on a permanent no-entry terror watch list. Want to take advantage of me and cheat? Have fun never being able to come back to the States. So am I the a-hole?
For more stories, head over to my YouTube channel, link in bio.
What event made you grateful for your life? While back in rural Uganda for the second time, I was on a home visit for a potential orphan at an orphanage I helped build as part of a school project in collaboration with the local villagers of the village. This home visit took us to the top of a hill, where there was a tiny village with a really shoddy primary school that serves the children there. We were supposed to be interviewing 2 girls, aged 8 and 20. They were sisters. The 20-year-old came to us the day before begging for help from us. They were single orphans. Their mother passed away last year due to sudden illness. She was begging for help as their father is a raging alcoholic who, presumably, abuses them. When we arrived at their tiny house, after being led there by their already drunk father, the 2 children were not home. The younger one was at school, while the older one ran away at the sound of her father's voice, as we came to realize the next day when she came back to the village I was staying at to be there with the 8-year-old for her interview. The house was in extreme disrepair. The kitchen was an empty mud hut that had no cooking utensils or any food at all. The house was dingy and dark, and there were obscene newspaper clippings pinned up on the living room wall. They had nothing at all, and what little money the father earned was put straight back into his alcoholic addiction. The only reason the 8-year-old is in school is that the school decided to support her by allowing her to attend for free. The 20-year-old told us that she ran because she was afraid that her father would abuse her again, as he usually does, and was unaware of our presence. What was sad was that the father didn't even know the younger girl's name, and their ages. He didn't even care about them and was drunk from day to night. It was then when I realized that I am so lucky to be who I am. I have 4 parents who love me very much. I can go to school every day without ever having to worry about school fees. I have a wide variety of clothes I can choose from, And I have food 3 times a day, and more if I'm hungry in between meals. I have a bed to sleep on each night that's clean and free of bugs, and despite all my blessings, I still took all of them for granted. I realized that the work I did and am doing not only affects their lives, it also affects mine, and that house visit was definitely one of the saddest things I have witnessed. I'm pregnant by my friend after a one-night stand. We're both still reeling after our partners cheated on us with each other. To be clear, my ex and I wanted children and started to try when I hit 30. Issues on both sides made it clear we can't have any naturally, so we saved up for a few rounds of IVF before discussing adopting. I do have a good, stable job, and with the money I saved up, even if half of it goes to ex after the divorce, Bean and I will be set for a while. My mother has been over the moon about the new grandbaby and has made plans to retire and help me should I find myself a single mother. Anyway, a couple of days after I posted, I invited Larry for dinner. I declined alcohol, which had his eyebrow raising, but I don't drink if I'm working the next day and he knows this. I told him after dessert, and yes, he was stunned. I'm on birth control due to PCOS and yes, BC fails too. I told him straight up I don't expect anything from him, but he should know as it was his child too. I wanted to keep Bean and he can be involved or not as much as he wants. He was quite concerned about my health, and besides a bit of sickness and dizziness here and there, I'm mainly alright. He nods and tells me he needs to go home and think. I agree and told him to call me when he feels he's ready. 3 days later, he tells me he's coming over, and he brings a couple of suitcases with him. He declares he's moving in and helping with the pregnancy, baby and all. I laughed until I was crying, but I will admit it was a relief and joy to know the father wants to be involved. We've sat down, hashed a lot of boundaries, agreements, and expectations of the whole thing. We're going to a lawyer so we can settle the contract. I am confident he just wants best for the Bean and I. He offered to buy the ex's half of the house so we could all stay here. He's settled in his room, my library/office is being turned into a nursery. He offered to convert the shed as the new library for my birthday when he could see I was crying over where to put my books. I have no romantic expectations of him and I suspect he feels the same. I get more hugs and forehead kisses though, which is nice. And it's lovely to have someone rub your back and pull your hair away when you're sick. Audio, am I the a-hole for not drenching a disabled girl with pee and poop? Dawn, a girl with Down syndrome, was hired to clean out kennels through a work program that gave people with disabilities the opportunity to gain employment and real-world experience. She was happy, affectionate, funny, and more enthusiastic about cleaning up puppy piss and shit than anybody I have known. Her mother was over the moon about Dawn's new job opportunity and she landed one that worked with puppies. How could this not be a good deal for everybody? Spoiler, it was a bad deal. Well, the kennels were set up with slide-out trays that caught puppy mess. They needed to be rinsed, disinfected and replaced at least twice daily. They were too high, with the lowest tray being about 2 feet off of the ground and the upper tray somewhere around 5 feet off of the ground. Most female kennel staff needed to stand on a small stool to remove the upper trays. Dawn couldn't do this. She lacked the motor skills and the arm strength to handle the trays, and within 10 minutes of being on the job she was soaked from head to foot in pee and poop. We tried to help, but any time she tried to pick up a tray, she leaned it towards herself and poured pee and poop all over herself. Her head, her face, everywhere. It was completely unsanitary and dangerous. We thought about options for a shelf or something for her to stand on. At the end of the day, though, she just couldn't do it. She physically couldn't. And she was completely in love with and dedicated to her job. And I had to fire her. All of this happened 15 years ago and I can still remember the frantic pitch in her mom's voice. She can do better. She can do better. We'll practice at home. She can do better. She started crying. Dawn figured out what was going on and she started crying. I was crying just trying to get the words out, and in the end we were all pretty much sobbing because we all knew the truth. Dawn couldn't do this job, no matter how much we all wanted it. They never came back in the store again and I never saw them around town. Every now and then I think about what other jobs we could have assigned Dawn and I can't think of a single one that wasn't a safety risk for her or the animals. It still breaks my heart that I had to let someone go who was completely in love with being drenched in pee and poop, and not even in an internet kind of way. My flight attendants won't stop their crying. What is happening? I've been flying for almost 30 hours and the flight attendants won't stop crying. 30 hours ago, I hopped on a late-night flight from New York heading to Los Angeles. After boarding, I saw that I had an entire row to myself. Takeoff passed without incident, and soon I was stretched out for a nap across the row. I slept for a few hours, I don't know how long, but I woke up to some severe turbulence. It's possible that the lights in the cabin went out for a moment, but I was so disoriented that it's hard to say. I checked my phone to see that it was 4 or 3 a.m., which I figured gave me about an hour until we landed. When I looked out my window, I was shocked to see nothing but wide open ocean. My jaw dropped. There's obviously no ocean between New York and Los Angeles. I hit the button to call the flight attendant and spent the next few minutes racking my brain for a lake that could have possibly been big enough to explain what I was seeing. I jumped when the attendant flipped off the light. She was grinning from ear to ear and tears were pouring down her cheeks. "How can I help you, sir?" she asked. I froze for a moment at her reaction before deciding to just ask my question. "Where are we? Why does it look like we're flying over an ocean?" She wiped her cheeks to clear the tears, still grinning wildly. "Sir, we'll be landing in about an hour." Okay, thank you," I said. After she left, I checked the clock on my phone again. It hadn't changed. I had to have been waiting with my call light on for at least 5 minutes. How is it possible that it hadn't changed at all? I opened up my laptop and saw a 2 displayed 4:03:00 am. I pulled out my phone, started to stop watching the app, and spent the next 2 hours looking back and forth between the clocks waiting for them to change. They never did. I tapped the shoulder of an older woman sitting in the row ahead of me. She looked back an annoyed expression across her face. Yes? She asked. Do you know how long until we land? I asked. She narrowed her eyes. That flight attendant said it would be about another hour. I shook my head in confusion. That flight attendant? We talked almost 2 hours ago. We should have landed already. She stared at me as if I was crazy. I was going to continue trying to convince her, but I felt a hand on my shoulder. I spun to see a male flight attendant grinning down at me, tears pinging off his cheeks onto my shoulder. Sir, I'm going to ask you to calm down or I'll be calling the captain. I told him that wouldn't be necessary and sat back. He removed his hand and stepped away. The flight attendants continued to stop by every few hours, offering meals. My stopwatch continued to tick up and is now telling me that I've been on this plane for more than 30 hours. I've explored all of coach and tried talking to some of the other passengers, but they've all told me that they're expecting to land in an hour or so. Around 3 hours ago, I tried getting into first class. I made it past the curtain, but was escorted back by 2 grinning flight attendants. Their grip on my arms were like iron. Sir, the seatbelt sign is on. One said. Please remain in your seat with your buckle fastened. We'll be landing in about an hour. I'd just about given up hope when a woman came down the aisle dressed in a business suit. She didn't look at me or slow down, but she dropped a piece of paper onto my tray as she made her way to the bathrooms at the back of the plane. I shot a look around before unrolling it. It said, "Are you stuck, too?" I pulled out a pen and wrote, "Yes, it's been 30 hours." I folded the scrap of paper up and set it on the tray closest to the aisle. She left the bathroom and picked it up as she passed. It's been 20 minutes since then. I don't know why, but I don't think the flight attendants would like it. If they knew we were talking. It doesn't matter. I have to do something. I'll update you all with whatever happens next. What sounds extremely wrong, but is actually correct. Before freezing to death, people tend to remove their clothes. Yes. This is called paradoxical undressing, a phenomenon frequently seen in cases of lethal hypothermia. Shortly before death, the person will remove all their clothes, as if they were burning up, when in fact they are freezing. When people feel cold, the most important thing is to ensure the function of the brain, internal organs and other major organs, so the blood vessels at the ends of the body will automatically contract to ensure adequate blood flow to the major organs. In this state of stress for a long time, the muscles that contract the blood vessels fall into fatigue and can no longer work, and must take a calm rest. The peripheral blood vessels on the surface of the body will all open, blood will quickly flow to the end of the limbs, and the long-term cold limbs will be immediately filled with warm blood, resulting in the illusion of very hot. When this signal is sent back to the brain will send the wrong instructions to the body, so that people may think that it is really hot. Take off all the clothes. At this time, people who are on the verge of dying get up and struggle to undress, thinking that undressing is good. I hate my mentally ill brother. I, 21, have an older brother, 22, who was diagnosed with bipolar II. Growing up together we had a very tense relationship. He was always extremely cruel, violent, and emotionally abusive. I remember getting tormented by him more than I remember any other childhood memories. He constantly got in fights with my parents, so growing up our house was a hellhole, but once he moved out our relationship improved greatly. In 2020, I was 18 and he was 19. He had a doctor's appointment for a wisdom teeth removal which required him to take medication to sedate him and painkillers to take to help with the pain. Since our relationship was better, and my parents were out of town, I decided to take him to and from the appointment since we still lived in the same town. On the drive home, he got physically violent with me, hitting me while driving, tugging the wheel, and screaming at me because I said we had to go straight home to our parents since I had to run to work. I should have stopped the car, but I didn't, and he ended up jumping out of the car while I was driving. It really scared me because I was worried for his safety, but he ended up being totally okay and my parents found him wandering around a gas station about 40 minutes later. He got diagnosed a few months after that. He's been great with his medication, therapy, and communication since then. He's really tried so hard to fix the relationship we have, and I see that the changes that he makes are good ones. I'm so very proud of him and all of the things he's doing in his life, and as far as I'm aware so are my parents. I just can't forgive him for the things he's done. All of the torment when we were kids, all of the violence, all of the things that happened are permanently stuck in my head even with therapy. I want so badly to have a great new relationship with him and be supportive, but I always find a way to be reserved and not show any part of myself to him because I'm scared out of my mind. I want to forgive him, I just can't, and I don't think I should have to. There's a part of me that is happy he's mourning over our lost relationship, but there's another part that makes me feel sympathetic to him. I just don't know how to love my brother.
Today I effed up by getting good at a game to impress a guy I had a crush on. I used to play an MMO with a bunch of people I knew IRL. Out of all of them, I was the most interested in PvP but sucked at it. One day a new guy shows up. He used to play, but stopped for a few years. Everyone starts talking about how he was basically a legend, a god at 1v1s, was one of the former top players in the game, was so inhumanly good he got mistaken for a bot, etc. I immediately developed an awkward crush on him. He heard I was into PvP and challenged me to a 1v1 where he promptly kicked my butt. Then he spent a lot of time condescendingly giving me tips on how to improve and said he would show me the ropes. Being a dork with a crush, I was so grateful for any attention he gave me. His idea of teaching me was basically beating me over and over again. After a few days of this, he got bored and stopped paying attention to me. I was embarrassed that I was so bad and kept losing, so I thought if I could impress him, he would spend time in the game with me again. I spent a stupid amount of time practicing on the side and researching. I'm talking like 6 hours on weekdays and 10 plus on weekends. I literally lost weight because I stopped snacking on the side and ate the minimum amount at meal times. So after like 10 months of non-stop playing, I improved a stupid crazy amount. Managed to jokingly convince him to duel and I beat him. He thought it was a fluke and demanded a rematch. So we played again and I beat him again. He got so mad he changed his build to exactly counter mine, and he beat me. I was so happy because I thought he was into it, so I changed my build to counter him and beat him. And it turned into this stupid back and forth. I was having the time of my life. I thought I was showing off my improvement to a guy I liked. I learned theory crafting, I learned how to play properly, etc. etc. Meanwhile he was effing raging his head off on his side of the screen. After a lot of back and forth, unaliving each other in turns, he finally says he's done and logs off. I had no idea what happened and figured real life things was going on. Anyways, he didn't log back on for a while and I heard from our mutual friend that he quit the game. He claimed he only came back temporarily from a break and needed to focus on real life job stuff or something. I did not connect that with beating him. I just thought the timing was bad and I was sad I wouldn't be able to see him around anymore. He never logged back on again. A few months later we had another IRL hangout and he basically ignored me. Then made a few pointed comments about how he didn't like girls who were as into gaming as he was. And that girls who liked games too much were basically guys and he wasn't into guys. And that's when I finally realized he was mad I beat him. And he literally never returned to play again. And after a few more years, I quit gaming. And funnily enough, I heard from our mutual friend again that that's when he decided to start playing again.
What's the most incredible coincidence that ever happened to you? One day, I was driving when some guy ran a red light and hit me. The police found that it was the other person's fault and took him to jail for not having insurance. My car had pretty significant damage, and I did not want to pay for it myself. When I went to see what I should do next, I found out that someone bailed him out. Until now, things are okay and I thought that it wouldn't be too hard to get the guy to pay since he clearly had money. 9 months in, the guy doesn't answer any calls and claims that I'm the one who should be blamed for the accident. People at the station knew me because I come every few days to ask about the case. They understood my persistence, as the repairs were going to cost about $5,000. Eventually, they advised me to go and escalate to the head of that station and see what he can do for me. I went there and gave him the entire story. Once I was done, he called someone from his office and told him to help me close the case. I gave this guy everything and he made one call to the guy I'm looking for. I told him how he never answers his phone. But surprisingly, the guy answered. The guy who was helping me went into his office for the call. I heard a lot of shouting from the guy helping me and basically silence from the guy who hit my car. The call ended and immediately I got a call saying that my money will be ready tomorrow. I thanked the guy who helped me and asked him how he was able to get this guy to change his mind and pay me. His answer was, "I'm his father. Am I the a-hole for wanting my disabled mom to get rid of the puppy my niece gave her for company?" My mother, a dedicated nurse for almost 4 decades, suffered a debilitating stroke that left her disabled. Typically, stroke survivors can regain some normalcy in their lives through recovery efforts. However, due to the unique circumstances of her clotting in the spinal cord, my mother lost her sense of balance. Adding to her struggles, she experiences chronic pain from fibromyalgia, making it necessary for her to rely on a walker for mobility. Given these challenges, she requires a significant amount of assistance in her daily life. I spend around 11 hours a week at her house, helping her with various tasks such as errands, cleaning, and cooking. She also receives aid for 25 hours a week. Since the stroke, my mother has found it difficult to accept that she can no longer engage in activities the same way as before her traumatic brain injury. She expresses feelings of depression and loneliness, but her demeanor towards those around her is often aggressive. In an attempt to alleviate her loneliness, my niece decided to gift her a dog. But not just any dog, a lively 4-month-old golden doodle. This energetic pup is growing rapidly and has an abundance of energy. He craves running, jumping, and exploring, often leaving his mark on anything he comes across. My mother can only manage to take him out for a short period twice a day, if she can manage it at all. Some days, I'm called upon to take him out, while on other days, her neighbor helps. There are days when he doesn't get to go out at all. Additionally, due to his high energy levels, he is unaware of his own strength. Consequently, he accidentally broke my mother's walker earlier this week. Furthermore, he spends around 10 or more hours confined in a kennel. As a result, I have found myself devoting approximately 20 hours a week to helping my mother and attending to her dog. I'm starting to feel frustrated and overwhelmed. My wife recently gave birth just 2 months ago, and we already have a 4-year-old child. The time I'm spending at my mom's house is causing me to neglect responsibilities that need attention in my own home. I decided to discuss with my mother that it might be better if I took care of the dog, ensuring he receives adequate exercise and care, or consider finding him a new home. Unfortunately, my mother reacted as though I was being terrible and controlling. Now I'm left wondering, am I the one at fault here?
My mother-in-law let my husband cheat, so I slept with her husband. I knew that my relationship with my husband Dave was over the moment I learned that his mother had been setting him up on dates with various women. I learned about this through Dave's sister. She sent me loads of text evidence showing how my mother-in-law had not just advised my husband to cheat on me but to actively have intimacy with other women, all because my mother-in-law didn't like the fact that I ended up being unable to carry a child due to my womb being in an inhospitable environment, according to doctors. She hoped that if Dave cheated and got another woman pregnant, then I would forgive Dave and simply raise the child as our own, giving her the grandchild that she's always wanted. Well, she was wrong, and she also severely underestimated just how petty I could be. I asked my sister-in-law to keep it private that I knew about my husband's multiple affairs while I visited my in-laws. When I was there, I intentionally made loads of moves on my mother-in-law's husband, wearing booty shorts, showing off my cleavage, and pretty much showing Dave's dad that I was down to sleep with him if he was, too. I think my father-in-law also knew that Dave was cheating on me, so he didn't really have any qualms with sleeping with me. And, well, we did the deed. The crazy part was that he was better in bed than his son, but the crazier part, which I wish I had planned, was that my mother-in-law walked in on us. I think the gods intervened to make that happen or something. At once, she started calling me a tramp and other terrible words, but I just asked her why she thought I would let her make my husband cheat on me without getting revenge in some way. Sleeping with my father-in-law allowed me to get back at her and Dave. Now, I'm halfway through my divorce with Dave, and I've just learned that I'm 8 weeks pregnant. I asked my doctor about it, and he said that it looks like a perfectly normal, perfectly healthy baby. And I'm torn over whether I should send pictures of the ultrasound to my mother-in-law or not. Regardless, though, I think my mother-in-law got what she deserved. I just hope she looks at this child and understands that she is the reason why she will never be a part of this baby's life, not even if her husband is the father.
I dumped a kid's lunch in the trash. So my sister bought my daughter a bento box that costs $50. Now before anybody gets on here and tries to poop on why a 6-year-old needs a $50 lunchbox, it's not your money so it doesn't matter. Thursday after school my daughter came home and while unpacking her backpack like I usually do I noticed that her bento box was not in there. When I asked her where it was she stated that a girl in her class named Audrey, fake name, had taken it and refused to give it back. I asked if she went to her teacher and she said yes but her teacher told her that it's just a lunchbox and it shouldn't matter. Now Audrey's name isn't new to my household, she and other girls always picked on my daughter and no matter how many times I went to the school about it nothing was done. To say I was pissed was the least. The next day I went to the school 30 minutes before lunchtime and requested a meeting with the teacher and the principal. They brought my daughter down and I explained the situation and they had someone get Audrey. Audrey brought the lunchbox to prove that it was hers but I asked them to open the lunchbox because my daughter's name was inside and long behold when she opened it there was my daughter's name as clear as day. When I requested she give it back to my daughter she began crying. The teacher asked if it would be okay if Audrey kept it for the day since her food was already in there and I said hell no and they had 5 minutes to find something else to put her food in or I would be dumping it out. Instead of finding her a closed container they began arguing with me so I stood up and grabbed the bento box and in front of all of them I threw the food out into the trash can. Grabbing my daughter's hand I walked out the office with the bento box leaving them to comfort the crying girl. Hours later I told my sister what happened and she said that even though I had the right to be mad I could have just let her have it. And she would have bought my daughter another bento box. I feel like it's the principle though, why should we have to buy something again for my daughter that she already had because some entitled kid wanted what's hers? Am I wrong? I dumped a kid's lunch in the trash. I was told that I should have just let Audrey have the bento box since my sister offered to buy another one and I just don't agree at all. You all want me to reward a child who has made it a habit to verbally and physically attack my child by letting her have something that belongs to my daughter and that's not okay with me. She's just a kid, your problem is with the school, not her. No, my problem is with the school, teacher, her parents and her. Y'all want me to enable this little girl so badly and I'm not. Y'all think just because she's a kid she doesn't know what she's doing and that's crazy to me. Why didn't you just dump the food on the desk? What would have been the difference? If I dumped the food on the desk she still would not have been able to eat it because the desk is just as dirty. You should call CPS. That's not my job, that's the school's job and they obviously won't be doing that because they are a bunch of kiss asses. I really appreciate you guys' comments and reaching out privately about homeschooling but that is not anyone's decision but mine and my husband's. For those calling me entitled, literally how? How am I entitled for wanting back what was bought for my kid? I feel like a lot of y'all are trolling by saying that. The last update got deleted I think so here it is again. My daughter has not had problems with Audrey since. I've attempted to speak with her mother to settle things but she is as insufferable as it gets. The principal did offer me a very sincere apology and my daughter's homeroom class was switched so she has a new teacher that she loves. Everything happened last week but I decided to post yesterday because of my sister. If I do offer another update it will be sometime next year since she will be switching to homeschool. Also please stop saying my sister doesn't care for her niece. She adores my daughter and they are closer than anything. My sister just has a super soft spot. For kids. For the person who called my daughter a beach and CNT you can bend down and suck the poop out of the nastiest butt cheeks walking the streets near you. I thought I was straight, but I think I've, male 17, have fallen in love with my best friend, also male 17. There's not much more to explain than the title says. Every night before I go to bed he sends me a good night, I love you message. I've never had the chance to tell him how much it means to me out of risk of sounding cringe or some shite, but every time he says it, it just makes me feel so genuinely loved and cared for. I feel queasy and fluttery when I'm around him. I feel such an attraction to him, but he's straight, very much like I thought I was. I don't know what I am now. I've never had successful or healthy relationship with women. I've never felt the same attraction to them as I do him. It kinda hurts me knowing I'll never get that chance with him. I can't control it though, and I know I'd get extremely bullied and called slurs for liking a man. I don't know what to do. Huge update. I, male 17, though I was straight, but fell in love with my, also male 17, best friend. The majority of the comments I was getting on the original post said to either wait or tell him how I feel, so I did. I told him. This morning, 5:20 a.m. we went on an early morning walk. On that walk, I asked him what he thinks about same-sex couples or people who like the same sex. He said, "Is this your way of coming out to me?" Which completely threw me off guard. We walked for a few more minutes in silence, before he said, "Well, if it is, I accept your feelings. I've really liked you since you're 9, just thought you were straight. I find it humorous considering I was in the same predicament. Anyways, we're going on a date this Sunday." A stranger asked if I was okay. I was on my way home from work and I didn't feel like going home, so I stayed on the sidewalk, sat on my bike and rested my head on the handle. I had a lot of stuff happen today and I just didn't feel like going home. It was raining as well, so I probably looked dramatic sitting on my bike while the rain is pouring, but I was too unbothered. Few minutes passed, a car stopped beside me. An old lady got out of her car, asked me, "Is everything alright?" I was surprised obviously, but I just said, "Yeah, I'm just resting here." She said, "I just wanted to check up on you. I thought you were feeling sick." I said, "Thank you," before she went back to her car. I'd cry, but that shite made me tear up. It was such a huge kind gesture, and I'm still on the sidewalk while typing this. I'll probably go home soon. People who vape in school, how'd you learn your lesson? This was during the last 4 weeks of the school year. It basically started when I, 17 meters, was in my psychology class drinking a Red Bull. I finished all my work and was on Reddit on my phone. Then I just got this urge to go take a piss. So I make my way to the toilets next to the building I was in. For some context, my school had 6 buildings but all on one campus. The toilet in the building I was in is only open for break times and lunch. So I had to walk to the next building over. So I get in a cubicle about to start pissing, then someone knock on my cubicle. I open the door and it's one of the younger boys in the school who I usually vape with. He asks if he can use the cubicle to vape. He was with 3 other people, which were his younger brother, my friend's younger brother, and one of their mutual friends. I straight up tell him to F off because I need to piss. He was fine with that and just went to the next stall over. A little detail about the school toilets is that there are 4 cubicles and there only one with a lock, which is the one I was in. 2 out of the other 3 had broken locks, so they would shut it all, and the last one had no door because some idiot in the school thought it would be funny to rip the door off the hinges. To be fair, it was. So I'm taking my piss and the other boys gets caught vaping by my head of year and the deputy head teacher, so they decide to start causing a commotion. Now I'm panicking because I can't get out. Then I realized the 2 vapes I had on me were still in their packaging, so I calmed down, and whilst the 2 teachers were busy dealing with the boys, I casually walked out. Then my friend's younger brother decided to shout, "Sir," he was vaping too. I act like I never heard him and continue to walk off. That was until one of the teaching assistants, says, and I quote, "Where the F are going?" I say, "I'm leaving." She says no and takes me up to the office where they decide to search me, like pat me down, which I later found out was illegal for schools to do in the UK. So they found my vapes. I say, "How was I vaping if the vapes were still in the packaging?" They say some bullpoop to me like I can't have them in school. Then I said, "You had no right to search me." We argued for like 2 hours after that. They called home. I was pooping myself. Luckily for me, my brother, 20 meters, picked up the phone. He basically pretended to be my dad and backed me, so my parents never found out. The school decided it was appropriate to put me in isolation for a week. That is basically when you're in a classroom with a behavioral management teacher and other kids in isolation. You're not allowed to talk. You only get 1 toilet break unless you have a medical condition. You're not allowed on your phone, and only get 1 15-minute break throughout the 6.5 hours you're there. The school decided that this would be a fitting punishment and that my spot in the school was safe if I complied and I did not fail my exams. Cut to results day. I get my result and they weren't great, not fails, but good enough to stay. I go to my head of year to discuss whether I should resit in order to get top grades or not, and he says to me that my name was blacklisted and that I wasn't allowed to return next year. So not only did these people lie and say my spot in the school was safe as long as I didn't fail, which I didn't, they also robbed a whole week of my life. Emergency medical technicians. What's the worst thing you've seen on a house call? Working a double-staffed ambulance backing up a rapid response car, and got called to take a patient with leg injury to hospital. As we arrived, I caught the distinct smell of death at the foot of her driveway. The solo paramedic came out of the house and was obviously trying her best to mouth breathe. She gave a handover that the patient had a leg injury over a month earlier. She was a hoarder and looked after her adult son who had significant learning difficulties, for whom she was the sole carer. The solo described the wound as the worst she'd ever seen or smelt. So we entered the trailer, following the pathway between flyers, pizza boxes, and more gross hoarder stuff. Then we saw her. She was about 70 or so, and had fallen and injured her hip and femur. She was able to drag herself to the couch and climb onto it. The trailer was a disgusting hoarder situation with clutter everywhere, so navigation was already difficult, and with her injury she was unable to walk. She sat on the couch in the same spot for approximately 10 days until a neighbor called 911. The police arrived, called the solo paramedic, and the solo paramedic called in the ambulance, which was us. Naturally, in my line of work you see some pretty gruesome stuff, but this case was the worst and it isn't even close. When we arrived, she was naked and covered in 10 days worth of feces and urine, and was physically stuck to the couch. The worst part was that the rats that also lived in her trailer had eaten 2 toes on the left foot down to the bone and approx half of her right foot. She had such bad neuropathy that she said she could feel the pressure of them chewing but no significant pain and was unable to kick them off. On top of that, she had several sores on her inner upper thighs, along with a skin tear on her right forearm that had live maggots in them. And we had to get her out of her hoarder trailer and into the ambulance. We literally had to peel her off of the couch. In the process of moving her off of the couch, a large portion of her skin just sloughed off as it was decaying after soaking in urine for a prolonged period of time. I've never smelled anything worse than when we broke that seal. The craziest part of this whole thing was that it all could have been avoided entirely. The woman had a phone within reach but didn't want to call 911 because it didn't seem that bad, and she didn't want to spend all day at the hospital. Don't anger your lawyer while you're selling your entire company. I was an in-house lawyer in a multinational company that sold software. I specifically joined this relatively lesser-known company to learn more about compliance. The company was listed on the stock exchange, meaning more compliance work. I highlighted this specifically as one of the reasons for my seeking out a change. I discovered it was filled with senior citizens, not an age thing, when I joined. Basically a company full of old-timers who are there purely because they're close to the company's owners. As part of the onboarding experience, I had to sit through sermons of how they changed the industry and how they know 20. This meant I had 3 different bosses, one senior guy who was the fixer, I'll call him Senior Guy 1 for convenience, no one really knew what he did, but he got a cabin to himself. Another was an ex-senior management guy who got a gig from the owner to negotiate tech contracts, Senior Guy 2. I highlighted this because this ex-senior management guy asked me, "What's a EULA?" Another was my reporting manager, with whom I was expected to work on a day-to-day basis. Senior Guy 3. 1 month after joining, I was told that the company was going private through a sale to another entity. I was shocked. But I had loans to pay, so I continued. For some reason, I was senior enough for them to handle this independently. This meant I worked through nights to complete tasks that a law firm would ordinarily do. I also worked on the definitive agreement that was in use for the company to be sold. This will become important later. By the 3rd month, I had decided the role wasn't what was advertised, and that I was essentially cheap labor for M&A. Buyers were from another city and planned to have their office there. I was not keen on moving. I read between the lines and started lining up interviews. Things went south quickly. Old-timers were unhappy that I was looking for a job. Because that would mean they're answerable to owners or worse, have to do the work themselves. Cue the harassment, which really solidified my resolve to leave. All my complaints about Senior Guy 1 and 2 to Senior Guy 3 were met with typical management talk. He sympathized and badmouthed them for burdening the company that he tolerates only because they are closer to the owner. Senior Guy 2 started countering all my remarks/comments on drafting on email. Even minor agreement points required discussion. If it was his mistake, then we had a call. If not, then he made sure to document it. If I raised a point, I was being rigid. However, if Senior Guy 2 raised the point, it suddenly made commercial sense. Edit, clarified some obvious thought part of a sentence here. This wasn't my first rodeo. I really didn't care about proving a point because I wanted out as soon as possible. Any pushback fights are going to be on deaf ears because, from where I am, labor laws are, at best, recommendations unless you're unionized. The only option is to leave. I was pissed and tired of being pushed over, but I wondered if it was just me angry at the whole situation and finding faults. I had an opportunity to test my theory. So, in one of the contracts that we were drafting, I made some comments and sent them to Senior Guy 2. As expected, he countered with verbal suggestions on the phone, which obviously didn't make sense. However, because he is senior, I had to do the song and dance to explain the points. So I arranged for the call, explained to him, and documented this in email, attributing each verbal recommendation, the time of the call, and the decisions suggested by him. Then I sent this back to him for approval. However, this time, I CC'd my boss Senior Guy 3 and asked for his approval on recommendations. Surprisingly, this practice was entirely new to them. Both of them were pissed at me. Senior Guy 2 and 3 were not happy. Senior Guy 2 was being questioned for the first time on email and Senior Guy 3 couldn't ignore my email as the head of my department. Unsurprisingly, I got a single-line non-answer from Senior Guy 3 basically asking me to discuss this with Senior Guy 2, followed by a verbally heated instruction to just do what Senior Guy 2 wants and not bother him. Now, I was sure that this wasn't going to work for me in the short term or the long term. So I resigned and gave my notice period of 1 month, since I was on probation. Senior Guy 3 was pissed because he thought the notice period was for 3 months and the sale of the company was expected to close in 1 to 2 months. Cue the 1-month harassment that typically follows in any toxic work environment after you resign. On the last working day, I walked up to Senior Guy 3's cabin and did the obligatory thank you communication. He basically told me that I am picking a huge fight and he will see that I never get employed in the industry again. He also told me that he is not going to pay me my full and final settlement of dues and a relieving letter, a huge deal in India to get to your next job. Employers hold off on these as blackmail for troublesome employees. His tone implied that there was very little I could do because they were all senior guys, and they had been there, done that. I wasn't the first disgruntled employee for him. I said my goodbyes. I got IT to confirm that I have returned the company assets and CC'd my personal email. However, I was pissed as well at the whole ordeal and had made up my mind not to show this on my CV. Revenge starts here. I call it my 1-2 shot. Shot 1, once I left, I spoke with my friend and decided to serve a legal notice, detailing the ordeal and treatment meted out to me. Ordinarily, the legal notice barely makes a difference as the management is usually thick-skinned about it. However, the legal notice was also sent to the owners, not just the company. This wasn't really required, but I did it anyway. Turns out, many directors were pissed at Senior Guy 1, 2 and 3 but were quiet, just waiting to sell this company out. My active involving the owners meant the entire board, including outside directors, mandatory for listed entities. This turned into a festival of explanations by all three in front of the owners. From what I hear, they all had to personally take leave to meet the owners, as shareholders, and explain themselves as naughty kids. Needless to say, everyone in the company was talking about it. I waited for 1 month to see if the notice had any effect aside from them being chided like kids. Expectedly, I got no response, but I knew from grapevine that they now had to spend on a law firm to reply to me because shareholders were aware of this information. I had made my point, but now I wanted more. I really didn't want to drag it because I was also looking for jobs and had loans to pay. However, their template management response, this time with HR copied, basically implied that since I had left without notice they were evaluating all options, including considering me AWOL. Senior Guy 2 basically threatened me that he will not pay me my dues or my relieving letter, evidencing service, and implied that there is very little I can do about it. Petty that I am, I made plans to get both. Shot 2, since I had access to the definitive agreement, and remembered huge details about it, having worked with law firms through the agreement in detail, I was aware of who stays, goes. I made sure to speak to those who were going to let go. Cue mass resignations and missed deadlines. I knew the specific approvals that would trigger because of the transaction. So, I spoke to the authority who would approve this transaction as a disgruntled employee. The authorities made their own inquiries. The owners got spooked. It was definitely not serious enough to scare them into thinking that the deal won't get approved. But the mere fact that a government authority was calling them meant they now had to deal with the authority, which would have never happened if it wasn't for me. Result, buyer used this as a low-value bargaining chip, citing bad employee experience and the resignation of several key members on key projects. I got my dues and relieving letter, evidencing service, within 48 hours of shot 2. Company got gossip for years on how the management was dumb enough to mess with a lawyer, including a sermon from owners on how to not piss off employees when they are trying to sell the company. Senior Guy 1 and 2 were left red-faced but survived because of old ties. However, their contracts were not renewed. Senior Guy 3, who threatened me, became a consultant after the company was sold. At the 10-year reunion, I spotted my high school love, my late wife, even though she's been gone for 7 years. I met Stacy, my wife, when I was in the 6th grade. We started officially dating in 8th grade, and we dated all through high school. Then just after graduation, she broke my heart. She wanted to go to college to find herself. I knew what that meant. She wanted to be rammed by hundreds of guys, but I was taken completely by surprise, but she made it clear there was nothing I could do or say to change her mind. And believe me, I tried. More than I'd like to admit. So just like that, it was over. I went to a college close to our hometown, and she went to a college that was across the country in California. Selfishly, I told her we couldn't be friends when we broke up, as I knew that would help me to move on faster. Remaining friends would have kept the sense of hope alive, stringing me along. Over the next 2 years, I didn't hear from her at all. At one point, I did hear that her mother passed away and her father passed when she was young, but I never really found a good way to reach out. I went about my life, coasting through college, with a couple of short-term relationships here and there but nothing serious. I assumed she did the same. Then, one night I went to a local bar with a few of my friends and there she was. I was too embarrassed to admit it, but I didn't actually recognize her at first. It had only been 2 years, but her hair was now short, and I already had a few drinks in me at that point. It was only after she made her way across the bar to hug me that I fully comprehended who she was. My friends and I would always joke that this bar was like a high school reunion. Every time we went there it was the only decent bar in the area, so everyone went there. This time was no exception. It struck me as odd that she was back in town mid-semester, as this seemed like a strange time to fly across the country to visit home. But, we got to talking, and after a few drinks I thought nothing of it. We really hit it off that night. It was like she had never been gone. The feeling I had when I was with her. I joked about how she left me behind when she went off to college, hoping to ease any concern about whether I was upset, but she completely brushed it off. A little later I brought up a story about a time when we were in the 9th grade, and my mother dropped us off at a movie theater for a date. I could see the confusion on her face. She quickly explained that she had been in an accident her first year of college, and that she lost bits and pieces of her memory. The way she described it was that she basically couldn't remember some of the specific memories from her childhood, but she could remember faces and who people were. It sounded terrible and I didn't want to prod too much, so I dropped it. After that night, we hung out again soon after. And then again. We picked up right where we had left off in high school. A few weeks passed, and she eventually told me she wasn't going back to school in California. She wanted to stay here, which was great. Things progressed, and we eventually got married after I graduated. Things were so great. Years rolled by, we had 2 kids. She ended up disappearing after the birth of our second child. I'm not sure what happened. She was so good with the kids. There were some ups and downs over the years, but things were generally pretty good. She was just gone. A few years roll by and I get an invitation to our 10-year high school reunion about a month ago. I thought about not going, but after some convincing from my friends at work, I decided to go. I don't quite know how to explain what happened tonight at the reunion. I'm still processing it. It seemed like it was going to be a pretty tame night. There were only about 40 of us that went. But then, somebody tapped me on the shoulder. I turned around, and I immediately felt what I can only describe as dread in the pit of my stomach. I couldn't quite comprehend what I was seeing. She looked so familiar. I knew exactly who she was, but my mind was having a hard time processing it. It was Stacy. The Stacy I dated in high school. The Stacy that dumped me after we graduated. She looked exactly as I'd expect, just grown up. But she didn't look like my Stacy. This wasn't the Stacy I married. This wasn't the Stacy that mysteriously disappeared. Stacy, oh my God, Steve. I can't believe it's been 10 years. How are you? Tell me about your life. You just kind of fell off the map. What happened? Me, still feeling confused. I'm great. I'm married now, with 2 kids. How about yourself? Stacy, I'm doing well. I fell in love with California during school and decided it was where I was meant to live. This is actually the first time I've been back since my mom passed 9 years ago. There really hasn't been any reason for me to come back since, until now. I ended the conversation there, and immediately left. I'm now sitting outside my home in my car. The lights are off. I don't know who it is that I married. Who I had kids with. But it is not Stacy, because that was definitely Stacy at the reunion. What is happening? I'm trying to piece this all together, but it is just too much. I don't think I can go in there.
College graduates of Reddit, what happened to that friend that never stopped partying? Ran into an old friend who was like that. We were in our late 30s when that happened and chatted. Turned out he partied hard until late 30s, and during that time, flitted around job to job to simply fund his partying. One day he looked around and noticed that he was the old guy at the bars hanging with early 20-somethings. Realized that all of the folks our age were ahead in their careers. With family, kids, etc. Said that was a pretty sobering revelation, and enrolled himself back into school and was in his 2nd year of engineering as he wanted to be an aerospace engineer. He partied with the right guys and now makes very good money in sales where he parties with clients but the company pays for it. I lived in a house with a bunch of guys. One of them was in electrical engineering. He got a job at Applebee's for some extra cash and started having parties with work people after work, so 3 to 5 a.m. That made it hard to make class, so he dropped a semester. We all graduated and he said he would refocus on school soon, but he was having too much fun partying. I went back to college 20 years later for a football game. He is still working as a waiter at Applebee's. He is the creepy guy who acts like he is best friends with a bunch of 20-year-old kids. He's a mess.
I'm starting to think that I'm a terrible person. I, 37, met my ex-husband, 45, at the movies last night. I was there with my BF, 37, and my husband with his fiancée, 25 to 27. When he saw me, he acted like he didn't see me, but his fiancée smiled and came towards us. She congratulated me on my belly, 30 weeks, so my ex-husband reluctantly came over. The fiancée said she didn't know I was expecting and asked her fiancé if he knew. Why didn't you say anything? He just mumbled something. She told me they were engaged, and I congratulated them. BF congratulated them too, and when he shook hands with X and wished him luck, X smiled and said that BF should wish himself a chance for me not to throw him like trash when I'm bored. It became dead silent, and the fiancé looked daggers at my ex. My ex and I met when I was 20. We got married when I was 25. We had our ups and downs, but for the last 3 to 4 years of our marriage, before it ended in 2020, we had stagnated. Besides the intimacy, we grew apart, sometimes not saying 2 words for days. I didn't know it was terrible at the time until I one day found suspicious messages on his phone from a young woman. To my surprise, when I was scrolling down, I felt no hurt, anger, or resentment but immense relief. I could finally admit to myself that I wasn't in love with him anymore, and now I know he's already moved on. I didn't need to feel guilty, either. He had fallen out of love with me too. The girl he was texting was his now fiancée. They had an online affair for 2 months since she lived in another city before they decided to meet. I was following this evolution. I watched while they planned the meeting. What was she going to wear? What she liked in bed? You name it. When D-Day arrived, and he told me he was going on a trip, I kissed and hugged him goodbye. I texted him later that I wanted a divorce. He came home the next day, and we started talking about divorce. At first, he was protesting and doing his part but not seriously trying. I told him he cheated on me and had no return. My best friend knew how everything happened. I found out this morning that she had told my husband that I knew he would cheat and didn't stop him because I wanted an out. My ex was livid. He felt like I had tricked him and that I had easily given up our marriage. Also, he felt guilty going behind my back when I knew all along. Can he really think that knowing me makes his cheating less? Cheating? My BF was very standoffish towards me this evening. He was thinking about my ex's words. I came clean and told him everything, and he was alarmed by my reaction. However, honestly, until today, I never even gave it thought that I did anything wrong dealing with our situation. I told my BF that I loved him and that we are a family now and expecting an addition. I don't know what to do. He is very reserved. Should I give it time? Or have I done something wrong and need to make it right? How am I going to make it right?
Terminal cancer is the best thing to ever happen to my wife. My wife and I got married when we were seniors in high school. The first time we were dumb enough to do it, she got pregnant. Where I come from, when you get a girl pregnant, you man up, marry her, and raise the child together. So, that's exactly what we did. Raising our daughter was hell. We were too young to be parents. But we stuck with it, and grew to despise each other in the process. The only reason we didn't divorce is because of our daughter. So, for 18 years I put up with my wife hating my guts. Nothing I ever did made her happy. We've slept in different beds for over a decade now. Hell, she beat my ass on more than one occasion. Fortunately, our daughter is attending college in the fall, and our charade of a marriage will finally be able to end. At least, I thought it would. Terminal cancer. After discovering a lump in her armpit, my wife went in for a screening. 6 months. A couple of years if we start fighting this aggressively. That night, my wife bawled her eyes out in my arms. We were sitting on her bed, and all our thoughts of divorce vanished. We should get some rest, I said. You've got chemo in the morning. I got up to go to my bed, but my wife stopped me. Can you sleep in here with me tonight? I had never seen this side of my wife before. She was vulnerable. She needed me. I loved it. I began taking care of my wife. She was always painfully weak from the chemotherapy, halfway between life and death. I reduced my hours at work, cooked and cleaned, and I was always there to comfort her. In return, she was kind, and she was never kind. She told me every day how much she loved me, how fortunate she was to have a husband like me. Tonight, I stood patiently outside her bathroom while she dry heaved, in case she needed me. Her phone started ringing on our bedside table, and she asked if I could answer it. It was her oncologist. Hello? Is Miss Carlson available? She's unavailable. At the moment. I'm not supposed to do this over the phone, but I have great news, Mr. Carlson, this couldn't wait. There was an error with your wife's initial cancer screening. Her test results were accidentally swapped with a different patient. From the look of things, your wife is completely cancer-free. I felt a tightness in my chest. I remembered what my marriage used to be like. With all due respect, doctor, we're going to have to get a second opinion. Did you hear me? Your wife's going to live. I hung up the phone, and heard a flush from the bathroom. Who was that? Nobody. A spam call. I tucked her phone into my pocket. Let's get you to bed, honey, you'll need your strength for tomorrow's chemo session. My husband has a second family. The ultimate cliche has happened in my life, and I'm absolutely broken. My husband, my rock, has been having an affair for over 17 years. We have been married for over 25 years. We have 3 beautiful children, 2 in college and 1 who still lives at home. But turns out, he's had another set this whole time. My husband is an insurance broker. He has multiple branches over the country which he spends week on, week off. Turns out on his week off, he's been with his other family in Albuquerque, where his other branch is. He's got a fiancée, whom he has 2 kids with, both in their early teens. I found out when I went to make a new Facebook account, and when I searched my husband's first name, another profile, with another last name popped up, and through that profile were the links to his fiancée's and his other kids' Facebooks. My husband is currently with said family, and I know it's him because his most recent post is a photo of him and that other family eating dinner. Among those photos were photos of him kissing the girl, and him being fatherly with kids who look nearly identical to my husband. I am absolutely broken. Almost every part of me wants to scream in his face, and reprimand him for ruining my life. But another part of me wants to pretend to be ignorant and let it be. Because our life is peaceful, he's good with our kids, has the main source of financial income. He's loving, but he's also all those things to another family. Not only would I be tearing a gaping hole into my family, I'd be opening up a vortex for them too. My heart is in shambles. I've never cried so much in my life. My youngest son is currently on a graduation trip with friends, and I'm alone till my lying, cheating, bastard husband comes home. My life is absolutely wrecked. It's literally a movie plot. I'm hoping he'll just come home and it'll be a big misunderstanding why he's kissing a woman with a ring on her finger. I don't know what to do anymore. I'm tempted to pack a bag and just leave. I can't be in the home where we've raised our kids, where we've spent every Christmas for the last 26 years and where I've been alone on New Year's taking care of our babies, while he works his ass off. I just can't. I want to leave a note for him to come home too. Hurt him like he's hurt me, but I don't think that's possible. I don't know how I'll ever face him again. Check out the crazy twist in part 2. My boy best friend thinks we've been dating for a year. I've known him for 5 years, different classes and courses but same friend group. Over time, he has genuinely become one of the best people I know, and it's only getting better every day. I can't lie and say he's not my type. Nerdy, charming, sweet, funny, flirty with the right amount of awkward. He comes pick me up from class, plays hockey without being a douchebag to the skaters, and most importantly, gets treats for my cat. Multiple strangers have mistaken us for a couple, even close people like our friends, professors, and worst of all, my family. He's kinda perfect, but I've never even thought of putting the moves on him. He's never shown romantic interest in me. We're friends, nothing more. Or that's what I thought. Today, he was spending the afternoon at my dorm, something he started about a year now. We're laying on my bed mindlessly watching Sonic cartoons when he says, verbatim, "So, baby, where do you want to go this Friday?" Matter of fact, this is the first time I've been called baby by him, so that kinda shocked me. Instead of asking why, I froze and was just like, what's happening Friday? He turns to me and kisses me, again, first time thing with us, hugs my waist and goes, our 1-year anniversary, idiot. I'm making reservations. At this point, I'm frozen. I genuinely don't know what to say. I'm gobsmacked. The dude I thought was my best friend, who never even showed interest in the dating thing, is under the idea that we've been dating for a whole year. I'm silent while he continues hugging me and scrolling on his phone, racking my brain thinking about what to tell him when his phone starts ringing. It's his mom, which he puts on speaker and she deadass goes, "Hi, are you still with your girlfriend?" Oh, so now his mom thinks we're dating too? He tells her yes, asks why she called. She asks for his help with private stuff I will not divulge here. He turns to me and goes, "Sorry, I'll be back in a bit, sweetheart." I just nodded. I was just like, all right, see you in a bit. No questions, no screaming, just acceptance. He gets up to put on his sneakers and leans down to kiss me again, which I just accept at this point. It's a nice kiss besides the fact that my mind is somewhere else. He leaves and I get a text from his coach, boyfriend's name, to come tomorrow at 19, he'll only listen if it's UTF. You mean only me? You're the responsible adult tasked with training these hockey players. Why do you depend on me bringing him to you? But that led me to a rabbit hole of finding out who knows we're dating. Apparently, majority of the people I talk to think we're dating, or if I'm being correct here, know we're dating, and just, have never mentioned it to me. I don't think it's a prank solely on the fact that his mom called me his girlfriend. They don't have the closest relationship. She is a very traditional, conservative and religious Korean woman, always serious and does not play around. When she realized early on that her son did not agree with many of her opinions, she stopped caring for him to the fullest, only keeping it civil for the rest of the family and friends. There's nothing he could have done to have her go along with something like this, especially when she wants him to marry young with a nice Korean girl, which I'm not. Also, he just does not seem like the guy to play with people like this. He might be dumb and oblivious, but not horrible. I don't know what to do now. I mean, he's a great guy, don't get me wrong, and if the last 5 years are anything to go by, he would be a great boyfriend, maybe even in the future a husband. But, I've never looked at him that way, so I can't say I love him. When this occurred, it was like the glass shattered and I saw how differently he looked at me, how he talked and acted, stuff that never changed since the beginning but for some reason I've never noticed. I can't sit here and pretend I love him like that. I wasn't thinking about him in that sense all this time. But, on the other side, I don't want to hurt him. He clearly thinks we've been together for that long, so he has to have strong feelings for me, and I don't want to step on them and scar him like that. I can't just keep dating him though, something that I've apparently been doing for a year. I could learn to love him eventually. It wouldn't take much to be honest, but it wouldn't be fair to him or me. In my defense, who dates someone and just does not ask them about it? If the roles were reversed and a year ago something happened where I was like shit, I love him, this was probably a date, we're probably dating right now, I would have confirmed with him or at the very least said something for the following year, not only at the 1 year mark. I just don't know what to do. I'm scared and angry, disappointed in myself for not recognizing the situation sooner. Feel like I'm stuck between the sword and the wall. Last thing I want is to hurt him, but I also don't want to lie to him. How should I go on about this with him?
What is the best thing to say to someone to subtly mess with their head? I think my favorite is giving passwords over the phone. I use the proper NATO phonetic alphabet, except for Q. It's Q as in cucumber. Wait, what? Cucumber starts with a C? Oh, no, I meant a regular cucumber, not a sea cucumber. Just say remember me from a long time ago? If they say no, just smile and say think about it, smile and walk away. This happened to me once a few years ago and I am still confused. Whenever my boss Dave walks by I always slide yeah, but don't let Dave catch you doing that into the conversation. What would you change about yourself, apart from the obvious? When my dad played tennis in high school, he would ask his competitors right before a match, do you breathe in or out when you serve? I just wanted to let you know that everyone likes you. Don't worry.
I think my husband cheated on me with his sister. I know it sounds insane and I don't want to believe this is true. I, 32, married my 33, let's call him Steve, a year ago. We worked together and it happened really quickly, but I'm happy with how it turned out. I was married before and have a son, and Steve was really welcoming and is always treating him like he is his real father. Last week we were fighting a lot over some money he lost gambling. I have to say Steve does not have a problem with gambling. He has a rule to never spend more than $20 in a week and he has never crossed that limit as long as I known him. Well, last week he did. He spent $50 over his limit and it really scared me, so I got angry and he got really defensive. I got an opportunity for a work trip, so I took it. Figured we both needed some space after those arguments. I left and finished my work earlier, so I went back early. I wanted to see Steve and my son. I didn't tell him that I am coming back. I don't know why. Maybe I am crazy, but I just didn't. I traveled all night and got home early this morning when Steve is usually at work, so I didn't expect to see him home. And I didn't. Instead I saw his sister, completely naked, in our bed, sleeping. I was shocked. We texted a lot during my trip. He didn't once mention his sister coming over. It's also obvious he slept in that bed since the living room was clean, no blankets or pillows, and I saw his dirty socks next to the bed. I just left the room and sat on the couch in shock for like a half an hour. When she finally woke up she was weird and awkwardly happy to see me, even though we only met once before, on our wedding. She told me her car had some hiccups and was nearby, so Steve invited her to stay over until he tries to fix it. Needless to say Steve doesn't know jack crap about cars, and she quickly packed her things and left, get this, in her car that started without any issue. I didn't text Steve, he is still at work. I don't know what to make of this situation. I get all these crazy ideas in my head and I don't want to make my husband into a freak, I just don't know who to call or what to do.
My delusional friend asked to sleep with my boyfriend so she can have her self-esteem back. Now, she's calling me selfish because I refused. Me and Kylie have been friends since our childhood. 1 month ago, her boyfriend cheated on her, which absolutely devastated her. Me and my boyfriend was there for her support. We did everything so that she could feel better. Recently we took her out to spend time with us. We took her to dinner and took her with us on our holidays. Eventually, Kylie started to get better and better. She started to smile again and was looking very happy. But she kept herself away from dating cause she told us that she couldn't believe in a guy very soon. We respected her decision and were fully supportive of her. Yesterday, Kylie came to our house. My boyfriend was going outside to bring some food, so he greeted Kylie and told her to stay here and have lunch with us. Kylie smiled and agreed. When he left, Kylie came to me and told me she wanted to tell me something. I asked her what and she told me if I could do a favor for her. She wasn't looking at me while saying this, so I felt a little awkward. Then out of nowhere, She asked me if it was okay if she wanted to sleep with my boyfriend for one night. I couldn't believe my ears what I just heard from her. It took some time to get my sense back and I told her what the effin' she's talking about. Then she started to tell me how bad and miserable she was because of her breakup, but then my boyfriend treated her best, made her feel happy, how my boyfriend took us to dinner, trips which her ex never did. She told me that she started to feel wanted while spending time with him. She also told me how her self-esteem got badly damaged and now she can't trust anyone except my boyfriend. How she wants to feel herself once again by sleeping with my boyfriend. She told me it would help her to gain her self-esteem once again and she would do better in the future by trusting others and told me it would be a great favor to her if I agreed on this. I was listening to her standing like a dumb. After she finished her lecture, I shouted at her and told her to get out of my house. At first, she told me to think about it calmly but I was in no mood to negotiate about this. So after some time, she became aggressive towards me and told me I'm an ungrateful person cause she helped me in my past many times and I'm not helping her for once. She told me I'm a selfish person and my boyfriend deserves way better than me. She said that she will snatch my boyfriend from me and that she doesn't give an effin' about our relationship. After saying all this, she went away. Now I'm confused thinking what just happened. I went to my chat list to talk with other friends about this, but when I opened it, I saw almost everyone blocked me after saying some horrible things. I was sure she told our friends something. Around 11:30 p.m., my boyfriend came home. I was sitting downstairs. He came and asked me what happened and why I called him so urgently. I told him to sit down. He did and I told him everything Kylie said to me. Didn't spare a single word and also told him that she fabricated something about my friends, and for that some of them blocked me. I showed him the blocked contacts. He was hearing all this silently. For a second, he didn't move his eyes from my eyes. From his look, I understood that he was in total disbelief at what he was hearing. But he composed himself and hugged me tight. I hugged him too and spent some time like that. After that, he said he couldn't believe Kylie would think something like that. He also told me he never allowed Kylie to think like that and couldn't even imagine that Kylie could say something like that to my face. He told me he feels emotionally drained cause he thought he was getting a sister's affection from Kylie but now it seems like his efforts were in drain. I comforted him by talking him on my chest and told him it was okay and it was not his fault. At that moment he was sobbing a little bit. But he gained himself and took his phone out. He checked if there were any messages that Kylie sent him or not. Luckily, she didn't. Then he wrote a long text describing how disappointing Kylie's actions were and also told her that he never wanted to see her again and that he would file a restraining order if she ever came near our home. After sending that, he blocked her on every social media. He also texted 2 of my friends who blocked me from his chat box saying that they are souls and thanking them for taking the garbage out of my life. Then he blocked them too. I was happy seeing how he stood up along with me in this situation. After all this, we had dinner together and went to sleep. None of us heard anything from Kylie after she left our house and we don't want to. Now I hope everything will just getting better between me and my boyfriend. We are planning our engagement very soon.
There's something wrong with the new house I just bought. See, I just moved out from my parents' home at the whooping age of 29. I've been saving up my money ever since I got a job at 19. I never went to college either. Since I never went to college I have a pretty cheap paying job. It's better than minimum wage, but not $50,000 a year better. The house I recently bought is small, which is fine considering it's just me living there. 1 bedroom, 1 bathroom connected to the bedroom, a kitchen, a dining room, and a living room. Now the problem started last week. I was trying to finish setting up my kitchen, when the toaster popped open. That was very odd considering I wasn't toasting anything or even messing with the toaster at all. But the toaster came with the house, so I figured it must have been broken and that's why they left it. I didn't face another problem until 2 weeks later. I was face down in my bed, 9 o'clock at night. I had just got home. I was half asleep when I heard it. The shower had turned on. I could hear the water running and it draining slowly. I managed to force myself up, in the half asleep half awake place I was in, but as soon as I reached the bathroom door, the water stopped. What the hell? I said out loud, half expecting someone or something from the inside bathroom to reply back. Nothing did. The bathroom door was shut. I was standing directly in front of it. I was almost too scared to open it. Then I reminded myself that I was a grown-ass man. I wasn't a pussy, and I wasn't scared. I grabbed the knob, twisted it, and flung the bathroom door open as fast as I could. Nothing. Nothing was there. I'll be honest, I almost fell to the ground from the relief that overflowed me. I was expecting to see some growling, on all fours, monster staring at me. Thankfully I didn't, and I know I shouldn't have, but I brushed it off as nothing. And I really shouldn't have. Small things have been happening ever since, nothing major. Nothing was enough to scare me so badly I moved back in with my parents. Just doors I thought I shut being open, and lights I could have sworn I turned off being on. It was almost a month later before something big happened. It scared me so bad I almost packed my shit and left. And, now, looking back, I should've. It was midnight, Saturday, my night off. Since it was my night off, I was staying up late playing on my phone. I sleep with all the lights in the house off, mostly to keep the electrical bills down. I just so happened to look down at the bathroom door. It was shut, but I could see yellow through the crack at the bottom of the door, meaning that the light I'd previously turned off was now on. I was honestly just gonna leave it, but I kept thinking about it, and it just kept bothering me. So I got up to go turn the light off. As soon as I opened the bathroom door, the light shut off. Click, my bedroom light flicked on. This wasn't even what really scared me, but a few seconds later I heard a crashing noise from down the hall. It sounded like it was either coming from the kitchen or dining room. I started my way down the hall, and I'll be honest, very very slowly, as if something would jump out at me any second. I made my way to the dining room where the lamp that had been on the table previously was now a disaster on the floor. Glass was everywhere. I got a broom and dustpan to clean it up. Most of the glass was in the dustpan, so I went into the kitchen where the trash was so I could dump the glass in it. I stepped on the thing at the bottom of the trash can that makes it shoot open, and just as I did, I saw with my own eyes, my cabinet door flew open, and then just a moment later my flour was knocked out of it. Now also, a disaster on the ground. I almost shit my pants right then and there. I dropped the dustpan full of glass and hauled my way to my room. I slammed the door shut and locked it. Then, my grown-ass self jumped on the bed and under the covers. I didn't move until I saw the light from the rising sun shine through my curtains. I decided to put cameras up. I don't know why. It's not like there was a person causing all of this. Obviously. I honestly just wanted to see if stuff happened while I was at work too, or just while I was home. All of the stuff that happened always occurred at nighttime. I'm writing this from my bedroom. It's 3 o'clock in the day, and it, whatever it is, has become bold. It no longer cares whether or not it's night. It doesn't hide in the dark anymore, and God, I wish it did. A few minutes before writing this I checked my cameras. They show live footage, and you can also rewind and watch old footage. I was watching old footage from yesterday night when I was at work. Doors would open and close by itself, same with the kitchen cabinets. Lights would flicker, and every so often I swear I could see a black shadow. While watching I heard a noise. I hadn't heard it before. It wasn't a crash or a loud boom. It was more like a humming noise. I couldn't tell where it came from. It sounded close but far away at the same time. I checked the camera in the dining room. Nothing. The kitchen next. Again, the camera picked up nothing unusual. Wait. Hold on, what was that? In the far left corner? It was a black shadow, except it wasn't. It was way clearer than that. I could see details like the way its eyes looked like it had seen something you could never come back from. Or the way its mouth was curled up into a smile. But not a nice smile you send neighbors you don't really like. A sinister curled smile. It didn't match its eyes. Whatever that thing was, it shouldn't be smiling. It seemed to teleport from the kitchen to the dining room, back into the kitchen, and repeat. It was in the kitchen when it teleported again, except this time it wasn't in the dining room. It teleported to the bathroom, which is connected to my bedroom. And that's when I noticed my camera wasn't on live feed. The footage I was watching already happened. I quickly changed it to live feed. It was no longer in the bathroom. I quickly snapped my head to look at all 4 corners of my room. Nothing. I switched the camera to my room, just in case. I wish I hadn't. Underneath my bed, under me, where my feet were hanging off, was a head sticking out. Those same eyes. And I swear that smile had gotten bigger, and I realized where the humming sound had been coming from all this time.
Am I the jerk for not talking to my husband because he is going on a boys' trip instead of our honeymoon? I 26 and my husband 27 got married in December of 2022. We had planned to go on our honeymoon next year because of work commitments we had. Last month he told me that we will be going on our honeymoon on my birthday in July, so I have been looking forward to it. Last week he told me that his work project will end in June and he misses his boys and would like to go on a trip with his boys to Thailand and was inviting me. I was heartbroken, as I have been looking for outfits already. I refused to go with his friends. He told me that we will go on our honeymoon later some other time, which I am sure he won't because he barely gets time from his work. He told me that one of his friends' wives would be coming too. He added that he will stay for my birthday and will go only after celebrating it with me. I refused that too. Earlier this year he pitched this idea of going on our honeymoon with his friend and his wife. I didn't like the idea as I just wanted him and I in our memories of this trip. We have been on radio silence for the past week. Please let me know if I am a bad guy? The trip has been planned for the past 4 years, since we started dating. It keeps getting cancelled for some or the other reason. My husband, my boyfriend at the time, decided on the place. He was not very specific about the place, he just wanted an international trip. Not Thailand particularly. Over a period of time his friends, both men and women, have visited Thailand and they have shared experiences with him. I wanted to visit some place like Seoul or Tokyo. We had just started planning it. I was afraid to talk to him because everything always ends up in a fight. I told him how I felt but I couldn't keep it together and cried most of the time. He told me that he would love to go with me to our honeymoon sooner rather than later. He feels that we see each other every day, going out and spending time won't make much of a difference, but he understands my feelings. Although I would be glad to go with him, however, it would have felt better if this would have happened without sobbing and expressing my feelings. I may be a little hypersensitive, but when I explain my emotions, I tend to get a choked throat and get teary. I still want to go to therapy for myself as I need to learn how to handle emotions in a better and healthy manner. Also, directly assuming his intentions to be devilish was not cool. What is the worst thing a family member of yours has ever done? This was a few years back. My dad took all of our savings, 1 million rupees, and played gambling. He lost everything. We came to know from the people we gave money that he took all of them a few weeks back. Now comes the worst part. My father didn't come back home once we knew about what we had done. We left to stay at my grandparents' house, mom's side. I was about to join my 11th standard in the next few days. Suddenly we don't have money to pay my first term college fee to get the initial admission. My mom was crying all the time and we didn't have contact with my father where he was and what he was doing. Finally, he picked our call after 4 days. I asked him, Dad, I need 10k rupees to join the college. I still remember those words from his reply: no need to go to college. Go to farm and help out your grandfather with the buffaloes. That's it, my father was gone into oblivion. I went to my grandparents, dad's side. They helped me all the way through my studies with the fees. My daily expenses used to fall on my mom's grandparents, since I'm staying with them along with my mom. My grandfather was in his 60s, he used to go to the farm on bicycle daily and get the grass for the buffaloes. Dairy products are the only income we have. And, my mom, I really don't have any words to explain the pain she has gone through. We watch out for every rupee we spend. I remember the days we ate with chutney, as there are days we don't have vegetables. My friends used to ask me why you'll bring always potato curry for the lunch? Because that's the only vegetable you get for less cost and we don't need to add anything to it. These problems might sound like cinematic, but trust me, real life is much worse than that. My dad came back to us after 8 years. All these 8 years my friends asked, where is your dad? We never see him often. He's an alcoholic. Still, he has those traits. He never cared for us, never helped my mom. He never earned and spent a single rupee on us in the last 8 years. And now I got 7 lakhs debit. Well, that's a whole nother story. Luckily, I had a job now. Still, I'm sending money to home for their monthly expenses. The only thing I felt really bad is about the grandfather. Once I got a job, I thought of asking him to stay at home. No more farming, no more buffaloes, no more cycling 3 kilometers daily to get the grass. I'll take care of you for the rest of your life. But sadly, he died last December. He never ever had a honeymoon period in his whole life. He used to work like a donkey till his mid-60s. He died in the same farm, getting the same grass he is doing from last 50 years. Change my view. The bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki were necessary. I firmly believe that the United States' decision to bomb the cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki at the end of World War II was necessary, because the alternative would have been a mainland invasion which could have taken months, possibly even over a year, and would have led to the loss of more lives on both sides. Japan's army was determined to hold out as long as possible and were trained to never surrender peacefully. Even everyday citizens were subjected to propaganda telling them that the USA was so evil, it would be preferable to commit suicide over accepting capture, hence the mass suicides of Japanese citizens on captured islands during the island hopping campaign. This view was so deeply entrenched that an invasion of the homeland likely would have reinforced this viewpoint further and led to unperceivable tragedy. I do not think it is a controversial statement to claim that Imperial Japan was an aggressor due to their invasion of China in 1937 and their unprovoked attack on the USA in 1941. The United States had every right to go to war. I have heard claims that the use of intimidation for political gain is akin to terrorism, but I feel as though this point is moot since tough decisions have to be made in war. War is never pleasant. Personally, I find it narrow-minded when people claim that the bombings were morally wrong just because they believe bombing cities is never acceptable. It should be noted that the Allied powers did not perform the bombings unprompted. They warned Japan to surrender throughout the summer or face prompt and utter destruction. It was not a unilateral decision by the United States either. It was approved by a majority of Allied nations who consider the bombing to be the lesser of two evils. In addition, it often goes unmentioned that the United States airdropped leaflets warning the residents of Hiroshima and Nagasaki to evacuate days in advance to minimize the loss of innocent life. I will admit this is not a complete absolution, since using threats of violence to force people to leave their homes is a form of coercion, but it does show that unaliving innocent people was not the main intention. I am not heartless or blind to the unforeseen impact. There was widespread radiation poisoning and a humanitarian crisis in the aftermath, but the deaths of between 126,000 and 250,000 people are clearly less devastating than the estimated 500,000 to 1 million deaths that would have occurred in the event of a homeland invasion. I should note that the bombings are nothing to be proud of. It is very unfortunate that this decision was necessary, but I am confident that nothing like this will ever happen again. The United States and Japan are major allies today. Hiroshima and Nagasaki have been rebuilt and are currently major cities, and several U.S. government officials have made official visits to the memorial. It has been over 3/4 of a century since then, and both major governments have long since officially made peace. Criminals, what made you think that something supernatural was going on? One night, I was boosting some silverware from this old lady's house. She was home, but old people are pretty deaf and damn slow, so I didn't give a shit. I hear this strange sound coming from the room where she's watching TV, so I go look, and she's like having a seizure. I might be a thief, but I'm not a bastard, so I call 911. They answer. Shit. I didn't know what to say. Hi, I was just robbing this old lady's house, and she's having a seizure, so I froze and said nothing. I wait with her, but she stops seizing, and then I hear sirens, so I hide in her tiny front hall closet with the folding doors and shutters. Before the EMTs arrive, she stops seizing. So by the time they get to her door, she seems fine, except confused about why they're at her house. They make nice, apologize, and leave. As soon as they're gone, she starts seizing again. Fuck. So I call 911 again, just in case. Really don't want a dead lady on my conscience. The same thing, sirens, she stops seizing, and answers the door. It's like a comedy at this point with me hiding in the closet, the bad guy with a heart of gold, but I'm not about to pop out and say, but she was having a seizure. So they leave. Just as they drive away with her waving an old lady goodbye, she falls down and starts seizing again. Now it's just sad and funny. Gotta call 911 again for grandma, but this time I'm thinking about leaving a note or something cause I do want to get the fuck out of there. I call. Wait for the sirens. Then she stops breathing. Fuck. I'm thinking if I don't get the fuck out of there, murder charge. I hide as the EMTs come through the door, put an oxygen mask on her, and take her away. By this point, my adrenaline is through the roof, and fuck it all, I feel like I've earned the right to take as much shit as I can walk out the door with, and since the house is now empty, I can take my time going through her stuff, silverware, jewelry, cash in a shoebox, you name it, if I can find it, it's mine. A fee for being a good Samaritan. Then one of the EMT came back, so I had to hide in the closet again. He walks into the living room, turns the TV off, and grabs a bag off her chair. This is the part that fucks me up. As he turns to go, an old man just appears out of fucking nowhere, pats him on the back, and whispers something to him. But the EMT doesn't react at all, doesn't turn around, doesn't pause, just heads back out the door like the old man isn't even there. Then the old guy glides to the front window and stands there, waving goodbye. Then he disappeared. I'm standing in the closet, frozen, wondering what the fuck just happened. That's when I feel it. Somebody's breathing down my neck. Get out of my house. I started running, praying, crying, right out the fucking front door. I didn't care who saw. I ran like a bitch. I quit my robber and thief life after that night. 'Cause every time I do something, I hear his voice yelling at me. Am I the jerk for returning a birthday gift I got from my boyfriend after he insulted me about my colorful past? This happened last night, but my phone is still blowing up. I female, 26, dipped into my savings and got Mike, my boyfriend, 27, a PS5 for his birthday yesterday. He knew he was getting the PS5 because he told me that the PS5 is the only thing he wants. We've been together for 4 years, so the cost didn't matter. That is until I found out what he thinks about me. Some background: when I was 18, I was involved with Jake, a guy who I met online. We ended things after 3 months, and I moved on shortly after with Adam, a guy from work. I found out a couple of months later that Jake and Adam were actually really close friends, but I didn't know Jake long enough to meet his friend group, so I had no idea. After finding out, I took some time off dating, and 2 years later, I met my current boyfriend Mike. I was upfront and honest with Mike about my past and the fact that I was unintentionally involved with friends. He said he understood and my past didn't bother him. Last night at his party, I showed up with a PS5, and he and his friends were screaming with joy. His best female friend Jessica laughed and said I wish I was a THT so I could afford a PS5 too. I looked at her with an "excuse me?" look on my face, and she just said never mind and walked away. I confronted my boyfriend about it, and he said, and I quote, "She's just messing with you. You can't take a joke?" So I pushed further as to why this girl is even calling me names, to begin with, and he said, "Well, everyone knows you were a thought before you met me." I asked him to explain how I was a thought before him, and he said, messing with best friends? He then pats me on the shoulder and said that it was okay because I'm not who I was back then, and if he could get over my colorful past and THT mentalities to give me a chance, then I could get over Jessica's comments and give her another chance. I didn't say anything. I just got up, took the PS5 from the gift table and left. He was pissed. He literally called me like 20 times, but I didn't care. I was so hurt that I took the bow off and took it straight back to the store I got it from. They happily refunded it. I thought that was done, but Mike and all his friends, including Jessica, are berating me for being petty, and they're all saying I brought this on myself by making poor choices. I responded to Mike and told him that he deserves better than me, so find someone who wasn't a THT and get the PS5 from them because I returned it. He started screaming how I'm the biggest AH for returning it and how I should be happy he ignored my colorful past. I'm thinking maybe taking it back went too far.